Everyone. Welcome to this Digital Health and Care Wales Programme Delivery Committee meeting. We will be joined later by Alex Percival and Lawrence James, who will be joining for item 4.1 on the agenda. In relation to today's meeting, I'll just make a couple of opening points, which are committee members are not always looking at the camera. That's because we have quite a large data pack that goes with this, and we'll be referring to the papers. So if we're looking away at the camera, it's probably because of the meeting papers. We're planning on taking at least a 15-minute break after section 3, but we may choose to break it up a little bit more to avoid long sessions. In the interest of time, I will ask people to introduce themselves when they ask a question or they're making a presentation. And then we'll proceed with the agenda. I've got no apologies for absence. I can't see anybody that's not here. So with that in mind, we'll move on to declarations of interest. There are none identified in advance of the meeting. Can I just check with participants if there's anything on today's agenda that may pose a conflict of interest? If so, please raise it now. Right, can't see any hands. So let's move on to the minutes of the previous meeting. They're in the pack. Can I just check to see if anybody's got any comments, amendments or additions they wish to make? We're being asked to approve these, so no, please raise any points prior to approval. Okay, nobody's raising their hand, so I can take it that the minutes are fine and we will accordingly approve those. Move on to the forward work plan. Let's move to our board secretary, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Colleagues will be aware there's a number of additional items included in today's agenda. The next meeting in November, we've got the corporate risk trending analysis due to come back in addition to the standard items. There are a number of programmes that are probably at stages that might require additional updates by November, so we can incorporate that as we go through, but we'll do that through the agenda planning meeting, Chair.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. Anybody got any questions on that, or should we move on? Great. Okay, thanks, Chris. Item 2.3 then, Connected Care Programme Assurance of Action Plan. And for this, we'll hand over to Sam Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Sam Hall, Director for Primary Community and Mental Health Digital at the HCW. So we're submitting this report for noting today, but there's just a couple of comments I'd like to make on it. If you'll indulge me a few seconds. Firstly, I just wanted to comment on how professional the review team were. They asked really insightful questions. They spent a lot of time with us, and I feel they really got to grips with some of our challenges, and I'd like to thank them for that, because it was a really useful, reflective time for myself and the team as well. While the report is amber red, it clearly shows the progress that's been made. Of the 9 recommendations made by the Programme Assurance Review, 5 are met, 3 are partially met, and 1 is outstanding. The work left to do on both the outstanding recommendation and the other partially met ones are linked to the development and submission of an agreed by health boards and local government partners a costed business case to Welsh Government. As you're aware, a lot of work has been done in preparing this over the last few months. However, there is some new work which has come to light quite recently in the last few days, which we aim to complete over the next few weeks. Throughout the development process, we've shared iterations of the business case with our health board colleagues and our local government colleagues, who have been able to comment and make recommendations to make sure that we can really get the best possible submission into Welsh Government, and it's been an incredibly transparent and inclusive process, and I think that also goes to support the ethos and the feeling underneath some of the comments that came out of the Programme Assurance Review. And so we're hoping to complete the last couple of engagement activities in the next few weeks, and then we will do a final revision of the figures before submission. This will give Welsh Government colleagues a comprehensive breakdown of what's needed and what could be achieved, and how it will, which is again, you know, where a lot of the recommendations came from, was to satisfy the need for better applications for practitioners, better sharing of data and information, and most importantly, the absolutely most important part is better joined up outcomes for patients and citizens, and I believe this should absolutely satisfy the outstanding recommendations we've got in this case.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that summary, Sam. Anybody? We're being asked to note this. Has anybody got any points before we move on? Great. Okay, Sam. So if I just interpret what you said, we're looking to get the business case submitted to Welsh Government within a month or so from where we are now. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Great. Thank you for that summary. And okay, so let's move on to the main agenda. The first item is the action log. There is one outstanding item which is going to be picked up by the Programme Delivery Committee development session, which we have scheduled for next week. I think it's the 6th of August. So we'll close that one out next week and we'll report back on that at the next committee meeting. Moving on to item 3.2, the Strategic Diagnostic Review recommendations. And for this, we're handing over to Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Michelle Salem, the Director of Programmes and Engagement for DHCW. I was just going to give a brief overview of where we are with the Strategic Diagnostics Review. So committee members will recall that the two key programmes here looking at digital services into our laboratories across NHS Wales and into radiology services actually transitioned into DHCW. From initially being developed in the NHS Collaborative. So I think partly reflecting that and partly reflecting some of the challenges that we'd experienced in those programmes and the work, quite a significant amount of work that's been done to reshape those programmes and to ensure we're in a good position to deliver. We certainly felt that it was helpful to review those, as did our Welsh Government colleagues. So this was a jointly commissioned review by Welsh Government and DHCW to understand the lessons that we could take, particularly from those programmes. I think helpfully the recommendations that have come out of the review are actually much wider reaching. So they're more about how we move forward in terms of digital investment across NHS Wales. So I think that's really helpful. There were some specific points that came up, particularly in relation to the two programmes, and any kind of specific learning or work during this process. We've already taken those on board. So we've already, as I indicated, significantly reshaped those two programmes, and they're both actually now delivering pretty well. We've still got some challenges, but they're really moving forward in terms of their delivery position. So back to the review, a number of recommendations, high level, there's 7 high level recommendations have been identified. And as I say, they really relate to the way in which we approach significant digital investments across Wales, how those fit in terms of the overall architecture and what we're trying to achieve nationally, how we develop investment cases, how funding is allocated, how the overall governance sits above that, how we approach the market commercially, how we enter into agreements with the private sector. So they're really helpful, I think, in terms of the recommendations. And in fact, we've discussed those internally in DHCW with our exec team, and we are, we support the recommendations that have been put forward. We've also obviously shared those with Welsh Government. Welsh Government have now provided some response to the recommendations that we're taking on board, and we're pulling those two together really into an action plan, which I think is key in terms of next steps. So we've learnt these lessons. There are some really constructive points in the report. So how will we now work with Welsh Government and with Chief Executive? So our Chief Executive will share this and has shared updates with the NHS Wales Chief Executive so that we can respond to this as a system. So the next step really is to pull all that together into a comprehensive report and an action plan, and which we anticipate that we would bring to the November committee for colleagues to review.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Evan.
Thanks. I just want to add some maybe a reflection, so the reflection is that I think that there's often an interpretation that the national programs are the DHCW programs in some way, shape, or form, but they're not. They're national programs which we deliver on behalf of the whole system, and some of them go very, very well, and some of them are a bit more of a struggle, which is a lot of what this this committee will provide assurance on. But that's not something that we do in isolation, and it's very important that we work closely with our stakeholders and partners about the things that go well and the things that don't go well, because it's always a collective endeavour. And the more we are leading nationally, the more collective it becomes. So I really welcome that chief execs have been closely involved, as a peer group, have been closely involved in the development of these recommendations. Clearly both these programs, the diagnostics programs, were first established by the chief execs collectively in the appropriately named NHS Wales Collaborative, and then transitioned to us in January of 2023. There was some remedial action that was needed, which chief executives were cited on all the way through, although we were then managing those programs. And so they were closely involved early this year in the final stages of the LaFosse recommendations. And the thing that I want to, I think, probably to note and to welcome was that chief execs were really keen to bring out the lessons that had been learned in an unambiguous way. They were absolutely not asking for anything to be diluted or brushed under the carpet. The opposite, in fact, in that they really wanted the recommendations to have bite, I suppose. So we're working with them. We're working closely with Welsh Government on the action plan that will follow, because it is. It's important that we don't just learn the lessons, but that we apply the lessons that we have learned into future programs, so that they become ever smoother. And I think the whole portfolio arrangement and governance that we have, that again we work with government, is coming up to being a year old. So the change of program chair, governance, and other things was made in the autumn of last year. That's part of what we will be discussing at our development session next week, is a bit of a review on, kind of a 1 year on for this committee. So I think this is a really, really important piece of work, and it's important that we get it right, so that it lands and it's got sort of substantial traction. So I'm looking forward to bringing back the update. But I just wanted to call out I'm really pleased with the engagement that we've had at the most senior level from across the system.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. Thanks, Stephen. Ruth.
Thanks, David. I had a similar reflection to Ivan's, really. I think I just wanted to note that I was quite pleased in the observations to see the observation about our product-led and user-centred operating model benefiting the portfolio. And given the amount of time we spend as a board and committees discussing that and how we move to product-led model, I just wanted to, kind of echo my compliments on seeing that in the report. I think it's a good piece of validation for us, given the amount of time we're focusing on changing how we do things. So to see that in there was particularly pleasing. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Ruth. I had a similar view when I saw that myself. I've got one question for Michelle. Michelle, based on what you said, there'll be some things that DHCW need to take on board as actions, but my sense is that there will be other things that Welsh Government, possibly health boards, need to pick up as well. Is the action plan a broad set of actions which will cover everybody?
Yeah, that's the intention, David, which is, as I say, we've taken a position. We think there are a number of things that we can either lead or contribute towards. Yeah. But I think that would be really important that it's owned at the Welsh Government Chief Exec level. So that's, what we're working on at the moment with colleagues.
Yeah, great. That's good to hear. Okay, fine. If there's nothing further on the strategic diagnostic, let's move on to item 3.3, which is the Digital Maternity Cymru update business case. And for this, we'll go to Evan.
Thank you very much, David. Apologies on behalf of John Pinkney, who's not able to be with us today. John is the program manager, and he and the team have done, a lot of really good work over the last year or so. So I just wanted to recognise that, and then I'll take the committee briefly through the OBC, and that we've got the annual update from maternity coming up in the second half of the meeting as well. So I'll try not to duplicate too much, and so some of the wider picture will be there. So I'll focus on the OBC as a document and as part of the process. This is a program that initially was funded without a formal business case. Instead, it was funded off the back of a discovery exercise. Received multi-year funding from Welsh Government, but there was a reflection moment, shall we call it, for the programme board in the autumn of last year, and particularly it was learning from some of the diagnostics programmes, and also especially from the WICIS Welsh Intensive Care Information System and where that was, which led the programme board to decide to pause and to undertake a formal outline business case, and the real reason there was in order to try to bring all of the costs into visibility, including the Health Board local implementation costs, and also to draw out Health Board's position on implementing their commitment to implement the product, because that had not been formally documented or set out. So the OBC worked, the team worked on an OBC document. It's been working since the late autumn of last year. So it's taken us about 6 months to get to where we are. There's been a lot of Health Board engagement and a lot of clinical engagement in the OBC, and I think it's a very strong OBC. The exec summary provides an outline of where we are, and the key changes in it are, firstly, that it has brought all of the local implementation costs in, and so that has ballooned, really, right? And it also brings 5 years of live service costs in as well. And the inclusion of those costs have ballooned the sum required to successfully implement a digital maternity system across Wales. And that's because, you know, there's a slightly different basis in the OBC compared to the original discovery. So the original discovery was for the procurement and then the configuration implementation, but based on a number of assumptions about Health Boards funding their own costs. Whereas in this case, we've asked all the Health Boards that wanted to participate to set out what their full implementation costs were, and also an estimate of five-year costs, and that takes the envelope up from around 7.5 million to about 19 million, because the OBC now includes a lot more. Not all Health Boards are included in the OBC in that regard, in that 2 Health Boards have already started to implement or have implemented their own the maternity solutions locally, so they're not excluded. 5 of them are included in the OBC, and both their costs and their benefits are therefore reflected in the OBC. And I think the good news is that the OBC still stacks up as a system level as a value for money case. The case is quite strong. Rhidian can come in later to reinforce, but the benefits of a single national maternity system, they address gaps in the record, mixed paper and digital record, fragmentation in the record, a full view of the pathway, because you don't know where women and birthing people are necessarily going to present, so that you can see that, and that reduces harm, which reduces significant benefits for individuals, but financial costs to the Welsh risk pool and the insurance and the indemnities that are paid out, addressing a known quality and safety issue. So that still stacks up. The next question was about how to square the circle. So the thing which I wouldn't call it innovative, I think it's more evolutionary, is about the commercial framework and the commercial mechanism that is in the OBC. Historically, OBC's business casing has tended to be quite large, almost monolithic, in that we require a full and formal commitment from every participating organization right at the very beginning of the process before we start to procure. So everybody has to commit to a degree, right, an unknown outcome. Of course, you can manage that outcome through the specification and the requirements and the dialogue that you have with suppliers, but you don't know for sure what the supplier and the system and other things, and that causes some nervousness about people's commitment to an unknown future, as it were, naturally enough. So the OBC is in a phased arrangement and has got a framework mechanism. This draws most, I think, on lessons from the medicines framework. So the medicines is also a framework, but a multi-vendor framework. And the approach in the OBC is to have a single supplier framework. So we would go out to procure a framework which has one supplier on it. The first call-off from that contract would be a configuration and integration package of work that would integrate that solution and configure it nationally to other national systems. And then Health Boards would individually call off a known supplier, a known system, an integrated and configured system with all the costs fixed within the framework contract, and actually some of the terms and conditions and the service support stuff done in the framework. That would then give them much more certainty about which supplier and which system and the nature of that system when they come to make their decisions about implementation. So it's the first time that we've seen that approach in an OBC set out as clearly as this. I think it's a potentially very attractive solution, and it also enables Welsh Government to make it commitments in stages, and it gives us more control of the phasing and how we run through that. So the OBC is complete and is ready to submit. The program board, or the program chair, and I'm the SRO for the program, led a discussion in a very large program board. There's about 30 odd representatives from clinical and from Health Boards on the program board, and there were some members of that program board that felt unable to support the submission of the OBC. A number of health board representatives and health boards have offered an alternative approach, which is a standards-based interoperability approach with multiple parallel local procurements rather than the approach which is in the OBC. So although that is a minority of the members of the programme board, we felt appropriate that we would take a pause there in order to try to make sure that we could secure support from the different peer groups that we have in Wales, the digital directors, directors of finance, executive directors of nursing, chief executives groups. So we're engaging very closely with them at the moment in order to secure their support for the OBC. So it's been through assurance. It's here today to note for assurance, and my, I'm very pleased to bring it, and I think it's a good, strong OBC, and I've got full confidence in the route that is set out within the OBC. But as ever, we need to work closely with our with our colleagues and with other organisations across the system in Wales, and it's really important to have their support and the support of Welsh Government. So we just have to pause a little, I think, to make sure that we can line all of that up, set out the alternative options, have a sensible conversation around that, and hopefully we'll then be able to submit the OBC and then proceed into the framework process. So I'm not anticipating changes to the OBC. I'm just making sure that we line up all of that support to smooth the path. Again, reflecting on lessons learned from other programmes in the past. So I shall pause there and welcome any questions and comments.
Okay, we've got a few people who want to come in, so let's start with Rowan.
Thank you for that, Ivan, and I'm very assured by the approach that you're taking. I was really pleased to hear about the idea of a block of work to configure a system and give certainty to adoption. I think it also recognises the costs of operating these systems through mechanisms around information governance, but also cyber, the ability to audit providers of solutions. So I really welcome that approach, Ivan, and those are sort of costs that don't always get considered when people are thinking about the total cost of delivering these systems. So, good to see not only patient safety and which is obviously top of mind, but also some of those other priorities that we need to consider when building national programs. So thank you for that, Ivan. Really good to hear.
Ruth.
Thanks, diolch, Ivan. Rowan's largely made the point I was going to make. I was going to comment on the, I'm pleased to see the transparency of the overall cost envelope. I think one of the things I do have significant issues with when we are doing multiple incidents of systems is that actually, whilst on a single basis that may appear cheaper than a large overall envelope, the additional costs that are within that are very difficult to be transparent about for the public in Wales. And actually, Rowan is right. This is absolutely key to us being transparent as a system and what it's going to cost to deliver these big programs. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Rydian.
Thank you very much, Ivan. I feel this is a bit like the hokey pokey. Some costs are in and then some costs are out, and then they're put back in and then they're put back out. And it's worth us remembering that cost is not the defining decision lever. Okay, this is about patient safety, providing something that is the best tool that we can provide for the clinical staff to provide the best care that we can provide everywhere. So that would be my first observation. Standard-based, multiple instances, theoretical, seamless integration, not known anywhere in digital systems. And my question to you, Ivan, is would you highlight to the board, because I know you've gone through this OBC in some detail, the Scotland experience, please?
I will, certainly. Scotland have 14 organisations, all using the same maternity system, so the same supplier and the same maternity system. And they started out on that path with the intention that all of those systems would be configured in the same way, would use the same data standards, and therefore would seamlessly interoperate. The contracts, though, as is as is usual, are between each of those 14 organizations and the supplier. So there have been some wrinkles and variations, and there's some divergence in the configuration and in the data standards that are used about how certain terms are defined within the system, and the feedback from engagement with the Scottish system is that is causing them some difficulty in terms of getting a full and consistent view of pathway across multiple organisations. For me, though, I think the key thing is that the Scottish NHS organisations are now petitioning the government to be able to redo and to move towards a Once for Scotland approach. So Once for Scotland is their phrase, not ours, because the clinical community sees the value of having single instances, because they automatically deliver data and a full visible pathway, including live pathways across multiple organisations, agnostic of regional boundaries. So we've drawn heavily on that. It's not the only example. There are some other examples. So there's been widespread it's all been clinically led engagement across the UK, and for me it's an illustration that everybody starts these endeavours with the best of intent and ambition, and I think it's a very sincere determination to all comply with the standard and to meet the same configuration. But circumstances are circumstances, local context is local context, and there are always inevitably pressures that would draw you away from the hard work of everybody converging and consolidating on single pathways, and then over time those sorts of wrinkles accrete and they become and you get inevitably more and more variation, and it is very difficult then to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, not because that was ever the intent originally, but because it is really hard to achieve that. The spirit is willing but the flesh is weak is how I kind of describe it. So that's what we're trying to address in this system. I mean, these things are difficult. They're complex digital programs, and I'm really respectful of the necessary differences in how services are delivered on the ground in different parts of Wales, and there's always a tension between that and the need to try to do things more consistently in a digital world. The other thing which I'd add is that the bulk of the costs in the OBC are estimated costs, because they won't be fixed until we know what supplier and what system has been configured through that framework. So all of the implementation costs and all of the live support costs and service maintenance costs for 5 years, which together add up to almost 2/3 of that 19 million. All of those are yet to be determined and will be subject to cost engineering, because money is scarce and we want to do this in as cost effective a way as we possibly can. So again, guarding against an optimism bias, not wanting to come back to ask for more money. The OBC includes, if you like, maximal estimates, and then we will all be working hard together with all the partners that are involved in it to try to engineer those costs down sensibly as we move into future phases.
Right, thanks, Stephen. Just got one question before we move on. Have you got a timeline for submitting the OBC? When do you hopefully get that over the line?
I can't give a fix on anything. Chief execs are considering a paper on it next week. So weeks, as soon as possible. So our commercial teams are ready to start procurement.
Okay.
Well, from the end of this week, in fact. So we've not paused on that, but we do have a process to go through. And the final thing I guess I would add is that Welsh Government has already approved the funding for this year. So as we'll see in the next item, the programme has got the funding to get to the completion of the framework procurement. If we can do that in this financial year, which if we start very, very soon, within the next few days or single figure weeks, then I think we can just about achieve. So we're not submitting the OBC with a request for funding or for any additional funding, again, because of this stage structure, which is in it. Hopefully very, very soon.
Okay, great. All right, lovely. Thanks for that. And I can't see any other hands, so let's move on to the next item. Sticking with you, Evan, and it's 3.4, which is the programme's overview report.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is the portfolio report, which, as members will be aware, we have at the front of it a summary, red, amber, green dashboard, and then we have individual reports for the major programs. There's an escalations mechanism in the pack as well, and ordinarily we go through those one sheet at a time, if you like, and I usually preface that with a sort of an overview state of the nation address as to where the portfolio is overall. So I'll pick out a few things. So I think the first and most important thing is that when we met last, we were working on the basis of funding assumptions. A control total of £28 million and funding assumptions for all of these programs, and we were planning against those, and in some cases replanning against those. The Welsh Government has now issued us with a funding letter for the DPIF programs. It's one letter for all of the DPIF funding programs. It has a number of conditions in it. The headline, though, is that we have confirmed funding this year through that letter now. For these, so they're no longer control totals and assumptions, but they are allocated, and they've all been confirmed as they were assumed, if you like. There are a couple of additional elements in there. So there's an additional £1.5 million for a package of features, additional features in the NHS Wales app focused around planned care, working closely with the Planned Care National Programme, and there's a relatively small amount of 150,000 to do some discovery work on the maternity red book, which is, for anybody who's been a parent in the last few decades, it's the red book with the height and weight chart and the vaccine record, which is the thing that you focus on very closely when you, especially when you're in your first. So with that, we've got some room to move forward. There are some wrinkles in that. In that there's some work around simplifying the way that we report milestones against each one of those programs, and that's because there's a conditional element as proposed at the minute to the funding for this year. So rather than confirming 100% of the funding for this year, the approach currently is to have confirmed the first 70%, with the final 30% dependent on delivery against performance milestones that are yet to be agreed. So we're working closely with government to agree those milestones for each program so that we can get into a monthly cycle of reporting them. The funding letter for this year also replaces all previous funding letters, and it is a funding letter for 1 year only. So no programs have any funding beyond the 31st of March 2025. There's no funding for anything from the 1st of April next year onwards, even where previously some of them did have multi-year funding letters that were running through into 25, 26, 26, 27. Those are invalidated and replaced by this letter. And then also there are some additional, and I think very welcome, ministerial review of the delivery roadmaps for two of the most prominent flagship programs, if you like, the DSPP NHS Wales app and the NDR data platform program, whereby the minister wants to personally review the future delivery roadmap, or looking forward beyond this year into future years. Again, there's some ambiguity around that. The committee will remember that the DSPP future funding programme business case was brought here. That's with Welsh Government for consideration at the moment. And the NDR programme will, within the next few months, be developing its phase 4 business case for funding for Welsh Government. It's a 10-year programme with 5 phases of 2 years. So we're just coming to the end of phase 3 in March of next year. So I think it's welcome that we get that in front of potentially a new minister, most likely, and that is good, because it gives us a direct line of communication to that minister to set out the ambitions, but also hopefully we'll get an endorsement from the minister to a roadmap, and then that is quite useful and important because these are collaborative programs with many stakeholders, and a ministerial remit, I suppose, or seal of approval is very helpful. So quite a few things have happened since the last meeting. I think a lot of it is positive. There's a little bit of uncertainty about this 70-30 funding arrangement and how we handle that and report on that for our financial planning. And I know Claire is picking that up with finance colleagues, and we've responded through Helen on the funding letter just to understand exactly how that is going to work and how we should report against that in terms of DHEW's overall financial position. And then the other thing that I wanted to say was that we're continuing to work closely with the programme chairs, working closely with Welsh Government to confirm the appointment of programme chairs, but also to bring them together collectively every 2 or 3 months to talk about common issues, common themes. One of the themes that we discussed at the last meeting is benefits. That's on the agenda today to look at and to give you an update on where that is going. So we're continuing to tighten up the governance. We're continuing to drive hard for consistency and standardization of reporting. The cadence of our reporting to Welsh Government is stepping up, so it's moving to a monthly cadence, and I'm really grateful to Welsh Government for working with us to try to simplify that so that it's not just an additional separate different burden overlaid on top of everything that we already do in terms of our reporting and our assurance and our performance reporting, that we can consolidate and make that fit for purpose. On the theme of simplifying everything we do. So I think there've been quite a few things there. In terms of the dashboard, we're still working through I think we've made good progress at the last meeting. This is my final sort of introductory piece, is that we confirmed a new red, amber, green self-assessment framework of delivery confidence. That has landed well, and I think has been welcomed by chairs, and some of the chairs have used that very effectively, I think, in their program boards to challenge back when people are taking an overly negative view within the program board. In that red really should be a very significant escalation. We still have got some work to do within individual programs to make sure that program plans are up to date. So as well as a consistent way of assessing delivery confidence, the confidence should be assessed against the most recent agreed program plan signed off by a board. And some program boards are still technically operating against quite a historic program plan. And so we need to take those through boards in order to review and reset, and then start assessing against those, whether because circumstances have changed for external pressures. The electronic prescribing system, for example, would be one, because of the changes in the primary care providers across Wales. They necessarily impact on the timetable, or because the funding envelope has changed. So medicines and the National Data Resource have both seen significant reductions in funding, so they need to reprofile their delivery plan. So that work is still hopefully coming to an end and soon, and working its way through. So I am cautiously, I don't know what phrase I would use, right? It's sort of low, reasonable, and high confidence. So I'm between low and reasonable confidence that by the time we get to the next meeting of the Programmes Delivery Committee, we will have a RAG assurance framework dashboard, which accurately reflects the current program plans that each program has got, so that they're reporting in real time on their delivery confidence, rather than slightly historically, or as I think they are at the moment. So after that little monologue, I'll stop there and welcome any general questions, and then hand back to you, David, if you want to take us through the deck one program at a time, and bring people in as appropriate.
Okay, fine. Any questions or observations on Ivan's summary? Marian.
Diolch, Ivan, and that was a very, very helpful update on where we are. But the underlying theme, notwithstanding the positivity around funding for this financial year, is a lack of concrete funding beyond March 25, as you've outlined. What's the level of risk that some of the work that we are doing and is ongoing on some of these programmes, where there is continued uncertainty? What's the risk of some of the work that we're doing becoming obsolete and becoming wasted, all that resource? Because there's still continued uncertainty, and there's likely to be uncertainty well into this financial year about the prospects for the budget for next year.
Yeah, I think, Diolch, Marian. I think the biggest, for me, the biggest risk is losing people from programs. So again, we are technically operating completely at risk in that we haven't got funding, and so technically programs would just come to a dead stop on the 31st of March. But in practice, and based on our ongoing discussions with the Welsh Government and the way that the whole system works, that is highly unlikely to happen, and almost it's impossible to make that happen. You can't just stop the NDR or the Welsh Nursing Care Record Paediatrics Programme or the Cancer Programme, because there are live services that rely upon them, and the quality impact and the harm that would result is so significant that those products are not going to just be abandoned and written off and turned off. So there's no obsolescence in that sense. I think for programs that have not yet got to a procured life service and a contractual commitment, then there could be an abortive cost risk in those areas. But again, I think it's unlikely because of the scale and the consensual collaborative approach that is taken to things. It's more that there would be really, really difficult, hard choices about what you need to reprioritize resources from, and how you can maintain delivery for things that are absolutely essential. The risk, I think, is that we lose people from programs, because they're closely involved in the planning of their own program, and they will see the budget reporting. It goes to the program board. The program team will be aware. They will know that the funding is not confirmed beyond March. And for people who are on fixed term contracts, it's absolutely appropriate that they should consider their options and should start looking for alternative, more secure or more certain employment. What happens is that your talent and your experience and your know-how walk out of the door. And then if you do belatedly get funding to continue, you've then got to put the team back together again. But they've gone to other things, and that creates costs, delay, uncertainty, and other delivery risks in the program. So the decision then for us as an organization is our appetite to provide certainty to those people at risk, knowing that technically we have not got the money yet confirmed from Welsh Government. It's a really, really difficult choice, but as people really prominent. It's one of our 5 missions, is to be a trusted partner for our own workforce as well as external stakeholders. Putting people first is the first of the principles in our strategy. So we're trying to do all that we can to handle that. But people, that for me is the biggest risk. It's the people thing, because without the program teams and the developer teams and the engineers, we can't achieve anything really.
Yeah.
Thanks, Evan. Just before I bring Chris in, so I think just to add to the point that's just been made, I think the other thing that's potentially at risk is if we're changing the scope of the programme based on reduced funding, what are the benefits that we were looking to deliver this financial year, and can we still achieve those, which again might have an impact on future funding. So one of the other risks I think we're carrying is benefits realisation for those programmes to support the case for continued funding beyond 1st of April next year. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to give a brief update and just checking with Evan if now's the appropriate time on the programme oversight chairs. I know from the last committee meeting, concern was raised. I know Ruth specifically raised the number of gaps in programme oversight chairs and the roles they play. The Chief Digital Officer in Welsh Government did provide an update earlier this week that I think he was keen was relayed to the committee. So I'm just going to quickly run through that for the benefit of the committee. So iCare, Welsh Government have identified Ian Hardcastle, a director within the NHS Executive, to take on the programme oversight chair role for that. Connecting Care, they are working, and I say they, Welsh Government, with Chief Exec colleagues across health and local authorities to try and identify suitable individuals to take on that role. There's been a gap there for a little while now. Intensive Care, the independent review that's taking place means they've put on pause the identification of a programme oversight chair at this point, and will look again to confirm once that review's taken place. The National Data Resource, the proposal is that the CDO within Welsh Government takes on the chair for the next 6 months, and recognising there's a potential conflict of interest, but that will be managed, is the feedback on that one proactively. And then finally, cancer, a chair's been identified, but they're still working through trying to confirm those arrangements, so can't be shared. So I think the feedback, David, is, I think from Mike and Welsh Government, is they are proactively working on it. They're aware of the concerns that came out of the committee from the last meeting, and wanted that update to be relayed to committee members.
No, that's really good, Chris. That was definitely one of our concerns last time round, and an escalation. So good that it's been followed through and we have some movement on that. Ruth.
Thanks, Chris. That was a really helpful update. And yeah, that does obviously address some of the concerns around the gaps. I think it probably only right to register my concern at the CDO taking the chair for 6 months in the NDR. I think that is, I'd be very keen for us to understand how that conflict is going to be managed and what that looks like. you know, it is one of the critical programs, and I think the concern for me has been that there are gaps in our critical programs. I mean, they're all critical, some are more critical than others, right? But that doesn't feel to me like the right answer, and it may be that there's more detail behind that it would be helpful to understand, but I certainly think that as a committee it would be helpful to understand how that conflict would be managed, because I have some concerns about that just based on the update that we've received. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. I'll take Simon's question, if I may, Chris, before you might want to come back. Simon.
Yeah, I got two really. The second one, the first is just to echo Ruth's point there, because one assumes that over the next 6 months there's likely to be representation to the Welsh Government about the future funding resourcing of the NDR, which seems to be then ending up as an internal conversation. So I think it would be helpful to have something, and I'm happy to pursue this myself if there's still necessary, to actually have something in writing that indicates how the potential conflict is going to be managed, rather than a verbal assurance, which I think is what we have at the moment, that it will be. And the second is, I mean, and this is no implied problem at all, because it doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but what's Ian Hardcastle's role in the NHS exec? Just in terms of, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know him, I'm sure he will bring an awful lot, but it would be interesting to know that, so that we can form some opinions of what individual chairs bring to individual programme boards.
Yeah, I believe Ian was overseeing the programmes for Mark Dickinson whilst he was off, but I'll look to Ivan and Michelle in case they know his job title specifically, because I can't think of it off the top of my head. But I will find that out and come back to committee members just to confirm that in terms of his role. But I'm sure he's overseeing the programmes within the executive. And just to come back to Ruth and yourself, Simon, on the conflict of interest matter. I mean, I'm not going to talk for Welsh Government. What Mike has said is that in managing the conflict, all relevant funding decisions will have additional oversight, because clearly the conflict being Welsh Government and the digital policy team will make decisions around future funding for the NDR, of which the proposal is he will be the programme oversight chair of. So again, happy to take that one away and have a follow-up conversation just to register the concerns.
That would be helpful. Thanks, Chris. Even back to you then for the bulk of the update on, and bring colleagues in as appropriate.
So I think I'm bringing myself in on the first one. If we just go through the order that they're in the document. Okay. I guess the structure of the pack after the dashboard. So the pack is a link in the papers for anybody who's watching this. It's not in the papers itself. That there's a commentary. There's a dashboard of the programme board's own self-assessment of their delivery confidence, which looks through to the programme objective, ultimate delivery outcome. Then there's a sort of a look back at a quarter on our programme delivery, which has got an extracted summary, just about a paragraph each for each of the major programs. Then we get into escalations. One of those escalations is a program-specific one on the Welsh Intensive Care System. So what I suggest is that we pick that up when we get to the slide on Welsh Intensive Care, so that we kind of take that in context. The other two, I think we've covered in the conversations that we've just had. So there's one on programme chairs, and then there's another one about funding and the general funding situation. So if you're content, I'll take it as read that we've covered those two escalations to the programme delivery committee here. I can see you nodding, so and others nodding too. So we'll carry on from there, and then we'll get to the national data resource first, and then we'll move into connecting care, which is first, Sam, and then we'll work through the different programs that we have. So the national data resource is on an amber red confidence level at the moment overall in terms of quality and resources. It's taking longer than the maternity program, than the medicines programs to work through the reduction in funding that it had this year, and I think that is a reflection of the sort of uber federated governance arrangement that we have for the National Data Resource Programme. So it is more a federated programme than any of the other programs that we have, really. And there's a very close relationship with the health boards, and for understandable reasons, they're very actively interested in exactly what the program is, and a large part of the funding, about just over a third of the funding, is distributed out to health boards as, if you like, collaborative partners in delivery. So it's slightly different. So that work has now completed and is to be submitted, I think, this week as a collective program board and federated partners recommended revised delivery roadmap. And it comes to some of the points that you made, David, about what's the impact of these reductions. So the impact is, and you'll see this in the benefit slides, so I won't go into it in too much depth, but that in general, the reduction in funding is causing some slippage in the planned delivery milestones, and the slippage in the delivery milestones causes a delay in the outcome of whatever was supposed to be achieved by those delivery milestones, and the delay in achieving the outcome delays the realization of the benefits that result from that outcome. So you can kind of extrapolate back in stages to what the benefit impact is going to be. So the programs have done that work. It's busy for the NDR program. I think I'll just pick out there's a lot of text on the slide in terms of the detail there. So I'll assume people have read it, and if there are any questions of detail, the one thing I think that I'd like to call out is that last week we had an on-site, because it illustrates so many of the good things about the NDR program. So last week in our offices here in Cardiff, we had an on-site with an Erin Bevan Health Board, the DHCW NDR core program team, and Google, who are the Google Cloud are the core technical supplier partner for the NDR platform, looking at first the natural language processing coding of documents into SNOMED CT codes. So as a test, we ran about 1 million documents through that process, through the technologies which are embedded in the Google Cloud platform to code them to SNOMED CT, and on those documents now turned into structured codes and the documents available, we were able to do some exercises with Gemini, which is the Google large language model. We had several clinicians in the room. They were blown away by what was being shown to them. Everybody very, very excited, and I'm going to caveat that that's in the general Google console. It's not productionized. It's not embedded into clinical systems, etc., etc. But I think what for me is exciting is the partnership with so it shows how the national program and platform, when it's able to get data at scale, can work really closely with some of the health organizations are leaning in harder than others, and Erin Bevan doing quite a lot in this space. And it shows how the data enables the applied artificial intelligence tools and techniques that are there. So it really helped a number of people in the room to understand what the NDR is ultimately for, which is the platform that you need in order to do these AI things. So it was really exciting. I was only there for half an hour. I wish I could have stayed for longer, but I turned up to steal the sandwiches and the buffet lunch, but it was absolutely fantastic, and it was really, really exciting. So I just wanted to highlight that there's a lot going on. It's getting busy, and it is spinning more and more quickly at the moment.
Yeah. Any questions on NDR, Rowan?
Just to kind of make the obvious point that really NDR is absolutely fundamental to the architecture that we're trying to build, and a source of data that is reliable, that can feed and be used across the system is so powerful. And even just mentioning NLP and automated coding, I mean that's a field that has been around for a long time. We can be confident that those types of approaches are high quality, reliable. Obviously, we need to see that within our own hands, but it is a real step forward in terms of having an opportunity to build a really strong strong digital capability to support clinicians in Wales. So setting aside the funding challenges, and we've just heard about them,
this is a very exciting development that we've just heard about. So thank you, Ivan. Really delighted to hear that.
Good points there. Thanks, Rowan. Ivan, can't see any other NDR related questions. So where are we going next? We've had an update on connected care already from Sam.
Yeah. So, well, if Sam, if you want to speak to this, speak to the slide on connecting care, and then you're on for GP systems framework as well, and then it'll be back to me for digital maternity Cymru. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So just briefly, just a quick update on connecting care. So we are in the final stages of completing the business case. We've got a few other elements that have come to light really recently, as in the last few days, that we're still working through. I think if I want to draw attention to this board, this committee, is the fact that whilst Connecting Care is a big program and it's the one we're working towards, we are still running WCCIS at the same time. And actually, when we talk about the funding, as we just have, the funding that we have been allocated actually pays for us to manage WCCIS. We have received zero funding for the development of Connecting Care. So we are still, effectively flying that plane whilst building the Connecting Care plane. And so that has given us challenges. To echo what Ivan said really strongly, we are already seeing that we are losing people. We are having to let contractors go because we cannot commit to timelines, etc. Whilst we know it's dependent on us to get the business case in for Welsh Government to make a decision, what we would strongly hope is that decision could be made quite quickly once the business case is submitted, as they have worked alongside us all the way through this and are aware of the figures and what the business case has, and the understanding behind it. So I think, for me, that would be the things that we need to really kind of watch for now, is the fact that DHW has been doing this at risk to DHW, and that we urge our Welsh Government partners to support us on trying to come to a quick resolution once the business case is found. But that's probably the most important part of the Connecting Care discussion at the moment. And if that's okay, Chair, I'll just move on to the next one, which is, so this is a GP systems framework. As you know, we are moving to a single supplier system in Wales with the withdrawal of the second supplier. This is a significantly challenging piece of work in that we will be transitioning about, I think, almost around 200 practices from one supplier to another. That work has commenced with a pilot. We've got that. So we're compiling lessons, anything we're learning as we're going along, as you would expect, of the really professional team that's taken on this work, and it is all green, which is so phenomenally lovely to say. And I think I'm handing that over to Michelle. Thank you.
Yep, let me just check. Anybody got any questions on either of the things Sam's covered? I don't think there are, because you've already covered one of them previously. Can't see anything. So yeah, please, Michelle.
I think it's me on. I think it's maternity Cymru.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm covering maternity is popping up 3 times in the agenda today. So I won't dwell too long on this, because we've already covered the business case and the OBC, and we've got the annual update coming on in the second half. So I don't think there's anything I'd add to what I mentioned earlier on, unless anybody's got any questions. Specifically, the red on resources is to do with the uncertainty about the OBC not having been formally submitted into future years, not relating to this year, but looking ahead to achievement of the overall programme objective, which is to successfully implement a digital maternity system across Wales.
Okay, can't see
nothing. I can hand it back to Sam then on iCare. Sorry, Sam.
Sorry, apologies. A little bit of a revolving door there. So again, I will just give a brief update on this, as I know we have discussed previously. So we have finally got to grips with some of the outstanding paperwork issues that we had. We now have quite a strong way forward. We will be taking that to the Programme Transition Board, which is in the middle of August, for them to hopefully endorse with a way forward for the clinical system for consultants, and also for the referral system from primary into secondary care. Those two main elements, obviously, that forming the largest part of the programme. And we're also having some quite in-depth conversations now with the health boards to understand what their requirement will be to take this forward. As we mentioned earlier, it's incumbent on those health boards to be able to consume anything that we go to procurement for, and that we need to roll out. So we really need them to get on board and to be able to explain and help us to understand what their requirements are around that, as there are likely to be resource requirements needed at each of the health boards. So that will all go in the middle of the month. So it's actually feels like we have turned a corner in the iCare programme.
That's great. I can't see any questions, Sam, so back to you, Evan.
I'm handing over deftly to Sam on the WPAS Bridgend disaggregation.
Thank you, Ivan. So this is the work to support the boundary change that happened in 2019 to move the health services in Bridgend from Swansea Bay to Cwmtaf Morgannwg. So there are two work streams to this. One is the movement of Swansea Bay patients from to move the patients formerly based at Swansea to the WPAS instance hosted by Cwmtaf Morgannwg. And the second part of that is to assess and mitigate the impact on national systems. So all of the WPAS instances are integrated into WCP and other systems across the national estate. So there's a big piece of work to assess the impact and make sure that each of those systems have the attendant updates made. So we're now, on the first part of that, we're now in the 5th migration wave out of 7. That's progressing well. And is on course to deliver on time. The test plan for the national systems has now been agreed, and we're in the process of building the test environment which will enable that to take place. So we're building a cloud-based test environment which will enable the impact on all the downstream systems to be tested. There are a number of inherent risks in this programme due to the complexity and the impact which we're working to mitigate, but it's not possible to mitigate them all fully. So we're going to keep a watching brief on those as we progress. There is an issue with funding, which is currently in place until March 2025, but the programme is always projected to continue until May 2025. We have made attempts to bring that forward, but it simply isn't possible due to the complexity previously mentioned, but also due to the testing burden on the health board. So they're not able to support us trying to bring that forward. So we are in the process of writing a paper to set out that cost impact and potentially request additional funding from Welsh Government. So that's pending at the moment. We have had to do some internal reprofiling of activities due to some delays in finalising and signing off the testing specifications, but that's now in place. We think we can manage those within the overall programme timeframe, so we're not expecting any slippage beyond that May date currently. Still have an overall rating of amber red, but that is trending downwards now.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Any questions for Sam on the Bridgend transfer? Okay, Evan, I think we're back to you for WCIS.
Well, you're back to me, and then I'm handing over to Michelle. So we've got the escalation, which was from the earlier on in the pack, which, as you can see, right, accords with a quite red status for WCIS, which Michelle can give us an update on now.
Yep, thank you, Evan. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, WCIS is effectively still on pause in terms of moving forward with the programme. The key thing to note, I think, from the highlight report is that Welsh Government have commissioned an independent review to really get a good understanding around the patient safety concerns that have been raised around the product and the proposal to move forward with a simplified workflow. So to assess and understand whether we can do that in a safe way, in which case we would be in a position to move forward across Wales then in terms of the deployment. So that's probably a very short update, but happy to take questions.
Okay, and just for the public session, when do we expect the review that's ongoing at the moment to conclude, Michelle?
Yeah, so indications from Welsh Government are that the report should be available toward the end of September, David. I think then there's likely to be some consideration then of the outcome from the report. We're also keen to engage with Welsh Government in terms of next steps, so we can do some scenario planning so that we're ready to move forward as soon as we've got that position agreed.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, anything for Michelle? No. Okay, great. Thank you for that, Michelle. Even we're back to you, I think.
Well, we're sticking with Michelle if we could, we'd stick with Michelle for the 2 diagnostics programs. We've got RISP and LIMS next on the slide deck.
Okay.
Thank you, Ivan. Sorry, I should have just kept the momentum going there. Sorry, Chair. So in terms of the radiology programme, so we've got an amber red rating. We've had a bit of a rocky start, I think, in terms of the RISP programme. It's quite complex, wide-reaching programme. So this is replacing the radiology information systems that we use to run our radiology departments and the picture archiving, communications capabilities, and some patient dose monitoring. So this is quite a significant replacement programme across the whole of Wales. And committee members may remember that the way that this is structured is each organisation in Wales has its own contract with the contractor, but part of our role is to create that kind of overview and hold all of that together, because there are clearly dependencies. There's work that we are doing as an organisation in terms of integration, supporting the data migration, etc. And then we're also supporting all of our health board colleagues to get an all Wales view. So we actually had a radiology board, very new news from the report. So we had that board this week. We do have now a plan. I think we've got one health board that is keen to just do some final work through on the detail of their individual contractual plan. And this is obviously really important. We would support that because health boards need to be confident that they can deliver the plans as well as the supplier delivering the plans. We have seen additional resource put in place by the contractor. And we have seen that, they've really been gearing up and they've been put more senior staff members in the team in order to make sure that we've got the right level of focus and are moving forward. So I think the key milestone now will be to land that overall plan for all of the health boards to be comfortable. They've got a basis to move forward. You will note that in agreeing and landing that plan, 2 of the health boards dates have already moved, which has moved them into the next financial year. So those would have been the early adopters. So they've moved forward into the next financial year. There are measures in place to support that in terms of obviously continuity of service. But these, I think, RISP is going to be an area where we will need very clear control and oversight. And we've also, DHCW has also set up sort of strategic oversight meetings with the senior team from the contractor, so that we are keeping their focus, if you like, from a strategic perspective on NHS Wales, and we are quite quickly escalating any issues or concerns that we have in terms of readiness or resource.
Okay, thank you for that summary, Michelle. Anything on RISP, Ridian?
Oh, there's a lot in this one, David. This is a complex program. People may recall that it took 7 years to get it going the first time. All right, so I'm really hopeful that we'll do it in a sooner time frame than that, because we have some standardization across the service. I just want to highlight a couple of things. So the radiology picture archiving and communication system, the storage of the images, is one element. The radiology information system, that's the receipt of referrals and scheduling and processing, and the safety associated with that is another thing. This hasn't been done before together, so it's worth us noting that, because there's some complexity and business change associated with that. From a requesting point of view, colleagues will know that in my clinical practice, I'm a big fan of electronic test requesting for radiology. It provides safer, faster, auditable, legible requesting. We have data dashboards which show the increase in that across Wales is being taken up in all but one health board. Cardiff and Vale do not use it, the national system, in hospital. And that's worth noting, because that may affect our ability to regionally request radiology. It's important that the radiology programme listen to the clinical community, who are not radiologists in the requesting process, because not only do those clinicians request it, they also receive the results. As you're aware, it's the result which is the important bit. So I just wanted to flag that it is complex and it is a vital piece of clinical tooling. It's almost changing the engine of the plane while we're in the air. We can't stop radiology for a couple of weeks while we switch it over. So please keep going, team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those observations, Ridian. And we did have a deep dive on RISP at one of our previous meetings, and Alison's doing a really cracking job of managing both that and LIMS, which is the next topic. Back to you, Michelle.
She really is. Thank you, Chair. So we'll take LIMS next. So this is the new system that is being deployed into our laboratories in Wales. Again, I would absolutely agree with Ridian's comments there. I think radiology and the laboratory services are kind of the aspects that keep the service running. So absolutely fundamental. Again, committee members may recall we changed direction on our laboratory system some time ago, which has led to a timescale which is somewhat shorter, I think, than anyone would have chosen to do. But I'm really pleased with the progress that's being made. The build is almost complete. So you can see from the timescales there, end of August is when we anticipate that we move into the test phase from the build. We have had a challenge, which is why the amber red, in one particular aspect of the build, because of the sheer number of tests and the complexity of the solution. That has been quite challenging. We've worked with the supplier. They've put some additional resource to support us, so they've been really supportive through this whole process. I think it is approached very much as a team effort to deliver. They've, as I say, they've put in some extra resource to help us get that over the line. There is really very little room for manoeuvre in the LIMS plan, because where we find ourselves in terms of contingency. So we've managed the plan really closely. David helpfully mentioned there the programme director, Alison. Our programme oversight chair has also been really helpful in maintaining a position with the health boards that, you know, we've had to make some difficult decisions. We've had to do it in a very timely fashion. We've got real focus on the timeline. The discussion at the board, again, we've had the board for LIMS very recently. I think now the focus shifts from the central team, if you like, and the supplier to the health boards. So we're moving into testing now. We have got a really good way forward, I think, on LIMS, where health boards have sort of distributed the testing. So they've agreed that they will focus on particular aspects. They'll work together so we can make the best use of the resources that we have. It's quite a big solution, the LIMS. But at the moment, we are still very much on track for our first health boards to go live in February. So that one's quite soon now, February 25. Will be when the first 2 health boards go live. So the first 2 health boards who will go live on the new LIMS, I think, is probably worth just reflecting. Our Swansea Bay and Howth are health board. One of the reasons that they're very keen to go together is because they're developing a new diagnostic facility together. So a diagnostic hub, if you like, where they are operating across the 2 health boards, and the new system is a key part of their ability to be able to work in that way. So they're really keen both to go live and to be able to do that to achieve what will be the wider benefits, really, of being able to operate across a region with one laboratory system.
Okay, thanks. That's Samu, Michelle. The change in RAG status, that presumably is related to the phasing of the deployments and the revised programme from the supplier. Is that correct?
So that was linked to the point I just made about the finalisation of the configuration and build. So some of the challenges there, and I think the very tight timescale that we're still operating under, to be honest, David. But and we will continue to manage that very closely with the board. Okay, fine. Thanks, Michelle. Any questions from Michelle on LIMS? Okay, no, we'll move on to digital medicines then. Who's picking this up?
Thank you, David. This one's for me, but I'll be quite brief, because this and the next one, cancer, are both they're both in the second half of the agenda as annual update reports from the program managers themselves. So we'll have an opportunity to dive into the 2 of these in a bit more detail. The only thing which I'd call out for medicines is that you can see amber red resources, which is about the team that is supporting the EPS rollout, and that is an example of what I was talking about earlier on around in response to Marion's question about risks, because we're losing staff because of the lack of certainty in that team, and it makes it very difficult to replace them. And we're thinking very carefully about how we can hold on to the teams that we've got and maintain our position, because the last thing we want to do is to lose our entire team and then start them again. Given the nature of the work, working very, very closely with primary care practices to help them to transition onto a new way of working. So other than that, there's nothing that I want to call out particularly, but if there are any questions on this one, and I guess if there are any questions on the cancer one as well, we'll answer those before we get onto the annual update.
Okay. Can't see any hands, so let's just finish off with DSPP, and then we'll. What I propose is we've been going for quite a while, so we'll take a 5-minute comfort break after the DSPP update, and then move on to corporate risk register after that.
Yep. So the DSPP program, as you know, really important. The numbers. So there will be eventually a public promotional campaign, but still technically the program is in a beta phase where we're not actively promoting through billboards and radio adverts and the like. Still, the numbers of users tick up quite quickly. So we're certainly beyond 240,000 users. We're probably quite close to 250,000 users now, and they do pile on from month to month. The important things that we're working on are one, what we're calling transition, but that is embedding some of our own people from Sam's operations directorate, some of our own software engineers, to work alongside Kainos so that we can start to bring elements of the service and the development in-house and run them through our own team. Kainos, our supplier partner, we're really pleased with the quality of the work that we're getting from them, but obviously, a commercial organization is more expensive than doing that internally. So we're keen to build options for ourselves, and so that work has started. The planned care features really welcome. Work closely with the planned care program, and really welcome the funding from Welsh Government for that package of planned care features. So we're working on that to be able to push that through as quickly as we can now within this financial year. And other than that, the app continues with the work that it is doing. The last thing I guess I'd add is about the offline patient identification process. So currently, in order to access the NHS Wales app, in order to access the NHS Wales app, you have to be registered with NHS Login, which is a service that we receive from England. Well over 1 million people in Wales are registered with NHS Login. But if you're not already registered, currently the only way that you can get logged in is if you have a driver's license or a passport photographic identification. Not everybody does. So we are working on an offline system, an offline journey, where effectively the GP practice would vouch for the identification of those individuals. So that is being piloted or tested at the moment, I think with 4 practices, and we're getting some positive results from that. And if we've got confidence that process is working effectively and is supported by the wider GP community, then we'll be turning that on more widely. So as ever, we're working very closely with our stakeholders and with our delivery partners to make sure everybody's on board with what it is that we're doing and everybody's ready for it, because there are changes. They're not significant changes here because there's already an equivalent journey for the My Health Online service, but the volumes might change. So we just want to make sure we understand that and we understand the process, and we've ironed out the wrinkles before we go large on it, as it were. But I'm really pleased with the process, and it continues to be a really exciting project. And the planned care features and the future roadmap, particularly, will take us forward further. I can see questions coming up.
Yep, I can see Simon and Ruth. So we'll go to Simon first.
I'll try and be brief, so as not to delay the break. I mean, the WIVs, the identification system that you just described, Evan, I think for me is a really, really important thing, because it's around equity of access to services, and those people who don't have NHS login, don't have photographic evidence such as you described, are often or likely to be those people who are already disadvantaged in access. So obviously the discussion and the adoption we play a part in, but ultimately will be a discussion and an agreement between Welsh Government and GPs collectively. What is you may not be able to give a definitive date, but what is your feeling on when, I know it's in testing as you described, on when that is likely to be in a finished, settled state that we could say, okay, you can run with that identification system now across Wales, over to you, Welsh Government, to secure agreement?
Well, I'm hoping it doesn't become a contractual negotiation point, because that would lock it into a timetable which is independent of the NHS Wales app. So I'm hoping that we can reach an agreement with government and with GBC Wales and professional, that the community, on the basis of consent, and I would argue that the changes from the way that My Health Online works to the way that WIVS works for the NHS Wales app are minimal. So, but we need to make sure that we've got an agreement, but hopefully not through the contractual negotiations, because that would be more difficult. Where we currently are that I think we're all agreed with Welsh Government that we shouldn't go with a public communications campaign promoting the app until we've got the WIVS arrangement sorted, because we would, if we were to do that, we would be promoting an app which some people wouldn't be able to access, as you say, and so it's important that we get over that hurdle first. Currently, we're working to a timetable of early October for that public communications campaign, so working back from that, it gives us a timetable to work through on WIVS. Technically, I think we'll be there in the next few weeks, having completed the pilot, but it's not just about the technical.
Okay, thanks. Ruth?
Thanks, Ivan. I think it's a similar comment about the kind of wider rollout of the app. It does feel like perfection is the enemy of good in the development of this app, and we are waiting for everything to be perfect before we roll it out. That just doesn't, it seems like an analog approach to app development for me, because I've never used an app that's perfect when it first gets rolled out. And actually, if we have more and more people using it and wanting to use it, that should then push forward our development as we move forwards. And I'm not saying actually WIVS might be the right thing to delay for, but I just have a concern that generally across the whole life of this program, we've waited and waited and waited for perfection to occur before we then roll stuff out to the next stage, and we're rapidly approaching no clear idea on funding into the next year for this. So actually our opportunity to develop on a larger scale is perhaps narrowing. So I just want to register my concerns with that approach. I think it's not app development as I would imagine app development to be, which I want to see move forwards. I want to see rolled out more quickly. So it's a reflection on that. Thank you.
Even I'll just take Simon's question or observation before I come back to you.
Thanks, David. And it's following on from Ruth. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, apps, first thing you do when you switch on your phone in the morning is that I don't know how many of the applications you've got will update. But one of the dilemmas I think we face is the nature of our relationship with the public and their perception of if something didn't work, and then also the nature of the data we're using. But critically, if you're a private app developer, then in a sense you suck it up and put the resources into fixing it. I mean, it seems to me that we've got this dilemma that we don't have identified resources potentially to move something on, or to add something, or to change something, and that goes to the fundamentals of how we are funded. And I don't want to get into that conversation now, but it seems to be that then becomes a barrier to taking the approach that you're describing, Ruth, which would be ultimately the sensible approach. I don't know where it's a rock caught between a rock and a hard place, aren't we, really?
Unfortunately, yes.
I think for me the challenge is that we need to keep challenging, are we being too cautious on this?
Yeah.
And ultimately it's not our decision, but I think we can take a view that we should be less cautious around some of this.
Thank you for that, Ruth. Even anything you want to
add? Yeah, if I come back briefly on that, and then I'll just Rowan's coming in maybe on this as well. So in terms of rolling out, I would say the app is rolled out. It's live. It's a live service. It's in the App Store. Anybody can download it. This is really a question about when is government comfortable in promoting it as a service, as a primary service. And I can understand the nervousness there on an issue which impacts directly on digital inclusion and access and equity of access and various other things, that they would want that reassurance, and we're working very closely with them and to make the decision at the right time and to get ready for the app. New features, I'd love to be rolling out new features weekly and just switching them on. I think the constraints on that are that the or the caution around it is the app is going to become the shop window for NHS Wales digitally. It's definitely a shop window for us as an organisation. It's a flagship service for us, and it's the only one really that directly impacts on patients at scale. So reputationally, the app and the quality of the service and the experience for users is really, really important for us. And we are acting on behalf of the whole of NHS Wales in that regard. And we're thinking really carefully about the service and support desk arrangements that we need to put in place were there to be issues with the app, because we could anticipate an absolute tidal wave of telephone contact and various other things, and we wouldn't be able to just ignore that in the way that maybe some commercial applications can. So there is, I think you're absolutely right. There's a tension between our appetite to go quickly and to operate like a digital software house and to push stuff out there, see how it lands, iterate and change, versus people's perceptions of what they want to see from an NHS organisation. So we are both an NHS organisation and a digital software house, and we've got to try and get the balance right between those two things. And I think, I think it's a good challenge, Ruth, right? And I think that across all of our products and the product operating approach that we have, the operating model, we want to move the needle incrementally more towards the digital software house sort of risk appetites. I think at the last board meeting, we've changed our risk appetite, haven't we, on one of our missions to try to reflect that. But we're doing it evolutionary, not revolutionary, is my usual phrase, I think. So I hope that gives you some reassurance, at least.
Okay, let's bring in Rowan.
So even I understand the concerns about going as fast as we can to deliver a digital service through the app. I'm just the other risk. I think there's 3 points to the triangle. There's one, go faster. 2, make sure that everyone has access, and you probably want to put those the other way around in terms of everyone having access first. But the third piece is, in these challenge times, the app can be an opportunity to deliver healthcare through the app. We're seeing increasingly the prescription of so-called digital therapeutics, which we would ideally want to be able to make available through the app, so that citizens in Wales were seeing apps that had some measure of assurance that clinical colleagues in Wales had kind of, for example, in mental health. So, there may be apps that are available already in app stores outside of NHS, which our citizens could use, which may be not of a quality that we would want people in those situations to be relying on. So there is a third piece here, which is, what is the ambition for the app going forward, and how does that stack up with no funding for the app beyond this current year? And I think that's something that I would urge the team to think about, because we've built this potential opportunity, and current funding suggests we might not be able to maximize that.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Before I come back to you, Evan, let's go to Iridian.
Thank you. A couple of things, really. I think the benefit of the app is to empower the individual to self-manage the clinical conditions that they suffer with. It also provides an opportunity to signpost to appropriate access to things that might help them in that.
Mm-hmm.
The internet is full of Dr. Googles, and some of them are dangerous, and we can't regulate them. So we have to be careful what we apply an NHS badge to and what we signpost to. But we have more allied health professionals than we have doctors. Right? We have a strong community pharmacy expertise. We have many opportunities to divert people away from acute environments, creating capacity for those who really need it in those acute environments. I'm of the belief that we should get it out as soon as possible. And if everyone can't access it at the beginning, that's a disappointment. But what it will do, A, it provides learning, but B, it may move some of the demand away from those services that those people who haven't got access to the app need. I'm also keen that the clinical voice is heard within the programme, because there are always unintended consequences on the demand management within both primary and secondary care for things being released on good intention. And we ought to be cognizant of that. This is a really positive move for NHS Wales. It should really be the flagship of digital empowerment. And we should really consider how we can provide content at speed for individuals. And I would be particularly keen for the sharing of documentation relating to care pathways, the sharing of results which have been authorised by the requesting clinician, and the ability for patients to see what is going on in what are often complex pathways. Thanks.
Okay, I think you've heard both sides of the argument there, Ivan. Is there anything you want to say in summary?
The only thing I guess I would say is that the app is looking really carefully about how it can become a broker and or a platform for that kind of service. So rather than building them within the app so that DHCW is itself the health provider, which we're not, and we're not equipped to be at the moment. Instead, it would help people to navigate to the right services, or to be navigated to the right services, which could include, for example, the prescribing of a digital system, a digital service to a patient, because that is a better non-pharmaceutical intervention for them, and then that would be surfaced in the app, and the app would take care of the authentication, identification of that individual, provide certainty that they are who they are, and then expose those services. So that's on the roadmap for the NHS Wales app, and it's always intended to be part of the architecture that we can surface, we can provide other services through it. But as I said, there's a lot to work on, and sometimes it's easy to forget that we've got almost 250,000 users of the NHS Wales app already, and that number is only going to continue to increase. And with a comms campaign, hopefully that would increase very, very quickly, and that gives us real scale and reach to address those sorts of things that both Rowan and Rhydian have mentioned.
Okay, great, thank you for that, Ivan. Right, let's take a 10-minute break now, and we'll resume at 12:20. Can I just remind everybody to turn their cameras off and go on mute while we have our break? Thanks. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're still waiting for Marion, but I think in the interest of time, we'll make a start again. We're on item 3.5, which is the corporate risk register, and for that, we'll go to our board secretary, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. And if I can, I'll just give a quick update on the action earlier around Ian Hardcastle's job title. So it's Director of Planning within the NHS Executive. And his role is around managing the clinical networks. So just to provide that clarity, following the question earlier, just wanted to start this item with a reflection on the last discussion, just to talk about risk appetite very briefly. I promise I will be brief on this, but at our board meeting in May, we did formally change our risk appetite for mission 2 around delivering high quality digital products from cautious to moderate. And the reason for doing that was to demonstrate our willingness to move at pace with new products and services. So I think the discussion previously was very helpful in challenging us around that change in risk appetite. Just moving on to the report then. So there are 18 risks on the corporate risk register at the moment, 5 of which are assigned to this committee under our committee assignment approach. We've considered one in the private session. There are no new risks or changes to risk score, so I'm just going to run through the 4 risks relating to the committee. The first one, 0332, Sustainable Major Programme Funding. So Ivan updated earlier specifically around the approach and the letter we've had from Welsh Government around DPIF funding for 2024-25. just want to put on record, we're working to split out this risk into two. One around long-term sustainable funding to support our future operating model, proposed operating model, which we agreed at the last board meeting the Audit and Assurance Committee would oversee. So this one will be split out very much to look at the short-term programme funding element. And as Ivan has already covered, there are a number of conditions linked to the funding for this financial year, and there is no future funding confirmed. So I know we've heard all that, David, but I think it's worth just reiterating that is the position, and it is clearly a position that puts us in a risky situation in terms of planning for projects going forward. So that's 0332. I'll run through them, David, if that's okay, and then open to questions. So 0269, the switching service data warehouse. Now, one of the conditions of our funding position was to relook at milestones and produce roadmaps for NDR and DSPP. As a result of that, as a result of the reduced funding for the NDR, the prioritization of the data warehouse was deprioritized. So we don't have a firm date of when that will functionality will move into the NDR. This is relatively low risk in terms of risk score. It's a score of 9. And just for some context, it was split out into 3 risks following an internal audit review that took place last year. 2 of those risks have been mitigated. This is the final one of those risks. And the reason it sits in this committee is because the mitigation is through the NDR in the longer term. This is also linked to an Audit Wales action that's tracked through our audit committee around the future of the switching service. So what I would like to propose, David, is that we bring a paper to the next committee, which I think will serve a dual purpose for this committee and for the audit committee, to review where we've got to with the switching service based on the NDR's position, and get confirmation moving forward of whether we're willing to accept the risk as it is now, given it's a relatively low level. There is a bit of history to this, and I know that you've been aware of that through a number of our committees, but I just wanted to make that suggestion. And I can see Ivan wants to come in, so I'll just see if Ivan wants to come in on this point. Ivan?
Yeah, if I could. So the nature of the risk when it was originally put onto the risk register was that it was a non-resilient service, and it was a very old service. So it ran on one set of servers in only one place, and if they went down, then we didn't have a replacement for it, no failover or backup or anything else. And we were managing that risk because it's a kind of a set of automated steps for the importing of, I think, CSV files, validating them, and which could be done manually, but that would be laborious and onerous, obviously, and that was our mitigation. We're now in a position where it is a resilient service, so the infrastructure has been refreshed and duplicated, so it's now resilient in the way that most of our line of business services are resilient. So the risk of it failing is significantly reduced because it's not a single standalone system anymore, and so the mitigation is still in place, and the ambition to get away from a legacy technology approach onto a modern, part of the general migration into the NDR, that is still there, but the risk that we're exposed to is a lot less now that it is a properly geographically resilient service. So I think it's the right time to look at it, and my gut feel is to take it off the risk register because we've got now that additional assurance of having a resilient service, even though it's based on legacy technology, but it's now resilient. So the risk of failure is a lot less.
Thanks, Ivan. So, Chair, my proposal is that we do that work. This risk touches a number of our directorates within the organisation, so I think we need to do the work, sense check with each of the parties involved, and bring something back for agreement or not in terms of a way forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Chris. Thank you.
Okay. So moving on then to 0333. I'm not going to dwell on this one. It's the intensive care implementation delay, which I think Michelle has covered already in terms of risk to the organisation and committee. And the final one is 0334, the transition team relating to the NHS Wales app and the DSPP programme. I know board members have recently had an update on that, but I'll just check with Ivan or Sam if there's anything to add in terms of that. I think we're hoping this one can probably be reduced down soon if all continues to go as we hope. Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Just to report that the progression of recruiting to those roles is going ahead at pace, actually. So we've got 26 roles in total for that team to establish the internal product team for the app. And out of that, we've now appointed 18. So we're making really good progress. So I think the likelihood of this risk realizing is reducing.
Yeah, it's good progress. Thanks, Sam. Ruth?
It's just a final comment, David, Chris, on the private risk. Obviously, we considered that in our private session, but I think it's just worth saying that we challenged whether that should remain a private risk, and we're going to review that at is it next week? I think at our development session for this committee.
Yep. Thank you for raising that, Ruth.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. 6th of August, we'll make sure that's on the agenda to cover. David, those were the points I wanted to raise in terms of the risks assigned to the committee. Happy to take any additional questions, but I think a few of them we've covered as the agenda's gone on, so I don't want to duplicate discussions.
No, good point. I can't see any hands, Chris, so take it that we're all happy with what you've covered. And with that, we'll move on to item 3.6, which is the benefits tracking realisation biannual review. And for that, we're going to Evan.
Thank you very much, David. I'm not sure how we are on time or whether anybody's got slides teed up. There was a slide pack that was a link from the document. I'm assuming that everybody will have had a chance to have a look at that. So I'll refer to the slide deck, but unless somebody's all set to put it on screen, then we won't put it in screen. And I'll just sort of try and give a summary on where we are, because I know and I really welcome actually that the committee has got a strong interest in benefits, and that's something that we want to look at across the whole of DHGW and across programs particularly. So we've got a joint working approach between mainly the Finance Directorate and the Strategy Directorate under Claire Osmondson-Little and myself. But this impacts on or touches on everybody, because we want to capture the benefits for live services under Sam and Sam, as well as the programs and various other things. So the slides are presented as firstly setting a national context. There's an All Wales benefits group that DHGW has been contributing to for a couple of years. That's been looking mainly at developing definitions of benefit categories and a kind of a benefits framework that could be adopted consistently across different organizations, so that we can do that in the same way. It's onto the second version, I think, of the benefits framework at the moment. So it's a collaborative endeavor, but it's making good progress, and we're getting a reasonable level of participation from all of the different health boards, but we're quite actively involved in that, given that we're at sort of sharp end of change programs. And I think the key thing to call out there is that is that we, through the DHGW Portfolio Management Office, are trying to work towards an All Wales benefits reporting and management tool built out of the tooling that we're building for our own Portfolio Management Office, but then making that available to the rest of Wales. And we're working through the All Wales Benefits Group to do that, which will give us a sort of a whole system view. I think that is really important, because very often our national programs deliver an outcome, which is an implemented digital program, but the benefits are all realized in the health boards, not by us directly. So it can sometimes be difficult to maintain a line of sight to that. We can track to the outcome, but we can't so easily track to the benefits. So I think that is a really encouraging approach. The second bit is about trying to work on a set of common terminology, so that when we talk about benefits reporting or forecasting or modeling or registers or benefits models, benefits realization, we're talking about the same sort of thing, and we understand what it is that we're doing. So in the slide deck, you can see a set of draft terms there. I'll come back in a second as to why we're still keeping open the opportunity to tweak and adjust those slightly, but again, working with the national group. And then we set out what our current approach is for Digital Health and Care Wales programs. And if I was to sort of simplify it, it is that each program develops a benefits register, a list of all of its anticipated benefits. Then for each of the benefits that are on that register, try to work some evidence or some documented kind of models of how a thing that you can count turns into a thing that you can underpin the business cases that we have. And then during the life of the program, we try to put mechanisms in place that make that very simple. We can start measuring against what the forecasts were, but more it's about, and this is a step that we've not put as much attention on in the past, I guess, as trying to embed in the digital system that we are providing the reporting of the benefits that it will generate. We've tended to leave benefits to an evaluation type approach that comes, or a manual approach. The more we can embed it, the more likely it is to happen. So we're going to think very carefully around that, and then we start tracking them, and we can baseline and we can report. And then there's an example of how the digital medicines program is an illustrative example of a model that says if you count the number of prescriptions issued digitally, then how can you extrapolate from that in a formulaic kind of way, with an evidenced logic, picking up on evidence wherever you can. And in this case, most of the evidence comes from work that's been done in England for digital prescriptions in England. And then you can kind of extrapolate that for each prescription done digitally, this is the benefit that you would expect to accrue in terms of time saved for different people, paper avoided, equivalent carbon dioxide emissions, etc. So then, as a sense check, we've got a sort of a dashboard of where the different programs are at the minute. Most of them are in the sort of benefits framework, benefits register space. So I think we all acknowledge that there's things that we want to do, but what I want to emphasize here is that it's showing that we're trying to get a whole portfolio view of where they are, and very conscious of the need to be consistent across different programs. So we're using the same tooling, and we're counting if we are counting the same benefits, we're trying to count them in the same way. It's extremely important, because then we can aggregate them and we can combine them with the benefits that we generate from our live services, and that helps with the reporting, but it also helps us to avoid dual counting of benefits, especially given the way that we work. And then at the end, there are some immediate next steps around the benefits management network at the Wales level, the engagement that we want, the tooling that we want to develop, and what we're aiming to do in the next half, because we come back. So this, I think, is the first update. But the committee's asked for a biannual update, so the next one will be roughly 6 months from now. So we try to set out what we're planning to do over the next 6 months, and then we'll be able to report back on that six months from now. So I hope that is useful to members. I welcome sort of any questions or comments on that as a general approach on the slide deck. Conscious it's not here on screen. For people who are viewing, then they'll be able to get an access to the slide deck through the board papers pack.
Yeah, I can confirm I've access to slides through the pack. Marion, your hand went up and then back down again. Did you have a question?
Yeah, yes, I did. Thank you, Chair. Really welcome this update, Ivan, and welcome the development of the benefits realisation framework and the All Wales tool. There is a subtle suggestion in your slide pack or the paper that there is no mandate to use the national framework. And I'm just concerned that could ultimately lead to a lack of consistency. So what steps are we taking to persuade colleagues at Welsh Government and in other NHS services to use the national framework, so we are all singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were?
Yes. So
sorry, can I just interrupt? I had a question which builds nicely on what Marion said, which is on slide 7, we're saying we're just doing benefits as related to DHCW at the moment, and health boards are excluded. In my experience elsewhere, benefits are often realised in the health boards rather than in things that we do. So collaboration with the health boards is key, and that really comes back to Marion's point around we really need a mandate to make sure that, or the mandate accepted by the health boards, so that we're basically all working together to solve the underlying problem, which is the level of funding we receive in the health board in Wales is below probably England, and is well below what the public sector would invest in IT. And the one way to unblock that logjam is through being really good at benefits realisation.
I'll try and answer. So I think there's 3 answers that I'd like to suggest there.
Okay.
So the first, I'll be candid, right? So I'm not that keen on the phrase benefits realisation, because my view is that the benefits are realised, and our issue is not the lack of realised benefits. It's that we don't report, we don't track, we can't count, and we're not managing benefits effectively. I've got a high level of confidence that digital delivers that significant benefits are realized across the system from the digital tools that we and others provide, but we're not as good as we need to be at describing and reporting and evidencing and quantifying those benefits. So I'm quite focused on benefits management and benefits reporting. When it says on slide 7 that we're focused on DHCW benefits, what that means is DHCW national programs, including the benefits that accrue in the health boards and to the wider system. So it doesn't mean only the benefits that are realized within DHCW or by DHCW. What it means is that we in DHCW are not currently focused on trying to track down the benefits that would have come from local programs, local projects, and locally delivered services within each of the individual health boards. So we're focusing on. So it means each national program, as you said, right, they will realize benefits out there in the wider system. So those are absolutely in the scope. We are, especially for this committee, focused on program benefits forecasting and modelling and then reporting. But there is other work that's going on in Sam's area about the benefits that we can report from national life services like the Welsh Clinical Portal or Welsh Nursing Care Record and so on. The final thing is that around in the absence of a mandate or how do we make it easier to mandate? Over the last few years, the work has been about working up an All Wales approach through the national, it's a collaborative group, the All Wales Benefits Group, and that is developing for ourselves an NHS Wales framework for benefits. The approach that we're taking in our portfolio management is to lean in quite strongly to industry standard approaches for portfolio management. So far, I think we've put over 30 people through the professionally accredited management of portfolios training. There was a second cohort that went through last week, and the reason there are 2 reasons for doing that. One is, why invent it from scratch if it's already there, and you can access quite a wide universe of professional training arrangements that help you to become professionally competent as a practitioner in those areas. And secondly, that if it is an industry standard approach, then we avoid the arguments about, well, my approach is better than your approach. And actually, that's not how we do it here. We don't like the way that you do it there, and we've all got to invent it for ourselves. So I'm really keen that we do converge on benefits to do that in an industry standard, professionally recognized way, as we're doing for the management of portfolios. And that's why some of our terminology might need to adjust and tweak a little bit. The terminology in the earlier slides in this deck are the ones that we've come to collectively as an NHS Wales system, and I'm reasonably confident that they are they're pretty well aligned conceptually with the professional, what would be in the professional sort of training literature and approach. But I'm sure they would need to flex a little bit. And the message I'm giving to the teams is that we're not going to flex the industry standard certified approach to our national approach in Wales. We're going to flex our national approach to the professional certified way, and I think that then makes it much easier, Marion, to get to a mandate. Because all we're saying is we're going to do this in an industry standard, professionally recognised way across Wales. That seems to make a lot of sense, and I'm hoping that will smooth the path for us. So that's the general approach. But thank you. I mean, good questions, and I'm really grateful to the teams in finance and in the portfolio management arrangements under Michelle, particularly for the work that they've done to get us to where we are over the last 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, no, if I could respond, thanks for the clarification on the health boards. That didn't come across on the slide, but that's really useful to know. And my observation would be we've made some really good progress in the last 6 months, and I look forward to the next biannual update in 6 months' time. So thank you for that. I can't see anybody wanting to come in, so let's move on to item 4.1. We've been joined by Alex and Lawrence for this as well, and Michelle will also be supporting. But even I think you're kicking us off and orchestrating the update on our assurance reports.
Thank you very much. And well, it's a team effort, as you know, right?
Okay.
So for all of these, and Michelle and I are really keen that the program heads are here to present their programs. And I guess I want to welcome Lawrence and Alex. So Alex is only a few weeks into role, I think, as head of plant care programs, and Lawrence is head of medicines programs now, so managing the different medicines programs. So I'm really pleased that the two of them can join. As I said earlier, John Pinkney unfortunately is not able to make it today, so I'll be covering the medicines slides myself later on.
Okay.
I think we've got medicines up first, so I'll just give Michelle the opportunity if there's anything that she wants to say to preface or introduce, and then we'll hand over and we'll let Lawrence have control of the slides. And I'm hoping we will have slides on screen. I'm not sure, or we don't have slides on screen, but they have been circulated. Okay. Michelle, anything?
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. No, not particularly. I'm going to leave this to Lawrence. This is his team, and he leads it really well. So we've had a number of changes in the area, and I'm now working with medicines, which has been exciting for me. But Lawrence has been leading the team for a while, so I'm just going to let him run through the update, and I'm sure we can take any questions between us at the end. So, yeah, over to Lawrence.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully those have come across.
Yep, we can see those. Thank
Fantastic. You. Great. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lawrence James. I work for Digital Health and Care Wales, and I'm the head of medicines program. And the purpose of my slides today is to give a real update on what we've achieved and what's next for digital medicines. So, for background purposes, Welsh Government commissioned an independent review into e-prescribing back in 2020, and a result of that review, there was a large-scale digital medicines program which was established, which there are 4 areas which I'll come on to in the later slides. But on the screen here is the vision for digital meds, and it's really about removing paper and making the prescribing, dispensing and administration of medicines everywhere in Wales easier, safer, more efficient and effective for patients and professionals through digital. So everything we're doing within digital meds is all aligned to that vision statement. So the 4 areas in digital medicines at the moment, we've got on the top left on my screen is the Primary Care Electronic Prescription Service Programme, also known as EPS. And really simple basic terms, we are enabling GPs to send a patient's prescription digitally to their nominated community pharmacy. So that will remove the need to print a prescription in the GP practice itself, typically the green prescription, hand it to the patient for them to take to their preferred community pharmacy. We're adopting NHS England's technology for that, and we're making good progress, which I'll come on to, as I said, in the later slides. The second area we're looking at is in secondary care, which is the Secondary Care Electronic Prescribing and Medicines Administration Programme, also known as EPMA. So we're looking to deploy EPMA solutions across every ward and every hospital in Wales, which will typically replace the paper medicines chart and paper prescription. The third area is that of the Patient Access Project, and that involves working closely with the Digital for Services for Publics and Patients programme to make digital medicines features available in the NHS Wales app, of which there's 2 that we're taking forward. And the fourth area then, which is, in my opinion, which is truly transformational, is that of the Shared Medicines Record Project. And that's around delivering a consolidated medicines, allergies and intolerances record for every patient in Wales, which can be accessed at the point of care, and importantly, follows the patient wherever the care is received. So in terms of the Primary Care EPS programme, it's quite a complex supplier environment. We've almost got 400 GP practices, almost 700 community pharmacies. We're working with NHS England to deploy their technology. We also have 7 community pharmacy patient medication records, also known as PMR systems in Wales, all of which have got a complete development to enable them to receive a GP prescription digitally via EPS. We're also working with NHS Wales Shared Services Partnership to allow community pharmacies to submit reimbursement claims for medicines dispensed in the community digitally. At the moment, we have 2 GB systems, but we need to migrate to that single supplier before we can complete the rollout of EPS. And we also have 4 appliance dispensers in Wales, which are typically dispense and send items for stoma bags and continence products. So it's quite a complex environment we're working in. So as I said, EPS is around enabling GPs and prescribers to sign and send prescriptions digitally to an individual's pharmacy of choice. And the key benefits here is around, some of it is around GP time released. We're told that an awful lot of time is spent on printing and wet signing each prescription. With EPS, there's no need to print. We can sign those prescriptions digitally, and then they will be sent in real time to the patient's nominated community pharmacy. And what it means for patients is that they will no longer have to visit their surgery to collect a repeat prescription, and equally, community pharmacies will no longer have to collect those prescriptions from the surgery. And also really important, there's a prescription tracking feature, which provides a complete visibility and audit trail of that prescription. So if there's any queries from patients around the status of the prescription, approved users can log on to EPS and have complete visibility on the status of that prescription. There's also a fully digital reimbursement process, which allows community pharmacies to submit reimbursement claims, and ultimately it will reduce lost or misplaced paper prescriptions. And there's a potential then to save millions of forms being printed every year in Wales, which is helping us to work towards a paper light and green NHS. So what have we achieved with EPS? So there's been changes made to the General Medical Services GMS contract, which allows and permits electronic signatures to authorise GP prescriptions. That's now active and live. We are live with EPS, so we have enabled the electronic transfer of prescriptions between GP practices and community pharmacies, and that's continuing to roll out. We've delivered, in partnership with NHS England and NHS Wales Shared Services Partnerships, the capability to send reimbursement claims electronically. And again, that's currently being used in the live environment. We've worked in partnership with the Life Sciences Hub to create a Community Pharmacy Supply Innovation Fund. And that's a fund which community pharmacies can submit requests for funding to develop their community pharmacy supplier system to be EPS enabled, and that's been really successful. We've had approval to roll out EPS to 3 out of the 7 community pharmacy system suppliers in Wales, and I think we're expecting the 4th one to receive approval in the coming weeks. And the key target for us as a programme is to ensure or to take through community pharmacy PMR suppliers in Wales, all to be fully assured to use EPS and to receive GP prescriptions digitally by the end of April next year. So EPS is live in 6 GPs and 8 community pharmacies at the moment. They're listed on the screen there. We first went live in Rhyl in Lakeside Medical Centre back in November 2023. And that resulted in a ministerial visit. Since we've gone live in additional GPs and community pharmacies in North Wales, in Llanbradach and Caerphilly and Sully. And on the right-hand side, whilst that might not be particularly exciting to everyone on this call, it is quite an exciting photo for those working on EPS. That's the first prescription that's been sent using EPS in Wales, in North Wales. And there's a quote from the Lakeside Medical Centre which shares the benefits of using EPS. I won't read that out verbatim, that's there to share you the benefits that they're already realising from using that technology and the time saved for GPs and patients. So moving on to secondary care, we are supporting the deployment of electronic prescribing and administration of medicines, EPMA solutions, in every hospital in Wales. And in time, we are working with NHS England to allow that technology to be able to send hospital outpatient prescriptions to a patient's nominated community pharmacy. There is a dependency on completing development work for electronic prescription service to do that, but there is appetite both in Wales and England to do that. Importantly, it's a nationally governed programme, but the applications are procured and deployed locally. And our aim is to introduce closed-loop medicines dispensing and closed-loop medicines administration, without which it's not possible to remove paper from the entire prescribing, dispensing, administration process without that integration. So closed-loop medicines dispenses around integrating EPMAs with the hospital pharmacy stock control system for medicines orders, and the closed-loop medicines administrations around being able to scan patients' wristbands, scan the medications, and record that digitally with an EPMA. Once we've delivered that, we're very close to delivering an entirely paperless process for prescribing and administering medicines in Wales. So the key benefits, so we're typically replacing the paper medicines charts, which are the end of the hospital inpatient beds, in digitising prescriptions, so reducing the number of paper copies. And moving to a digital process ultimately improves the legibility and accessibility of prescriptions and charts. We know from research and speaking with clinicians and frontline staff that using paper prescriptions and medicines charts is often difficult to read and interpret someone else's writing. Often the information is missing. And if the information is recorded on paper, it prevents us from doing that deep dive analysis and data intelligence as well. So moving to a digital process not only provides remote access to digital charts, which can be done on the ward, in a doctor's mess, or even at home potentially, But these EPMAs have inbuilt decision support for any drug and allergy interactions, which can help reduce harm and adverse drug reactions. So, for example, if I had an allergy to antibiotics and someone attempted to prescribe amoxicillin, the EPMA will have an inbuilt alert to warn the clinician that actually there's an allergy and it can help prevent harm, which we don't get with paper. And really importantly is that we're recording all this medicines and allergies information against standard and published languages. So this means we can record information in the same standard once I'm recording the shared medicine record, and that lends itself then to allow that information to be exposed and be made available and interoperable to other applications that need that medicine information. So we're using a standard language which it supports that interoperability. So what we achieved with EPMA, so we published a national framework back in November 2022. There's 3 suppliers on that framework which health boards can enter into a contractual arrangement with. At the end of March 2024, recently, all health boards in Velindre completed the evaluations of their invitation to tender responses, and they've identified their preferred EPMA supplier. Carver Vale are the first health board to be awarded 12 months funding for the implementation phase and have signed a contract with their supplier. Cumtaf have also been awarded 12 months funding and their contracts to be signed imminently. And the remaining health boards then are either had their business cases approved by Welsh Government's National Leadership Portfolio Board, or they're planning to submit their business cases by the end of August. Good progress being made with making national application program interfaces and integrations available for EPMA go live. So the EPMAs, whilst they're deployed locally, will integrate with our national architecture. And we're developing a number of APIs which allows medicines and allergies information to be reused rather than manually entered. So we've got a GP medicines API, which means that the EPMAs can pull and reuse GP medicines information without the need to manually transcribe that information. And that's a huge benefit, only for patients, because they don't have to repeat the medicines they're on each time they're admitted into hospital or they have a transfer of care, but also releases clinician time as well to spend more on direct clinical care. So we're making very good progress with those APIs. To support the programme, we've established a national technical and clinical assurance group. So we have representation for both clinicians and technical leads across all health boards, which come together to help us configure the EPMAs in a consistent manner and to identify opportunities where we can integrate with the All Wales Pharmacy Stock Control System and identify key requirements. And another national group we've established is that of a Community of Knowledge and Action group called COCA. Again, that includes representation from all health boards. We have members from NHS England as well who are part of that group. And the objective of that group is to share lessons learned approaches for the mobile devices that can be used for EPMA, any data migration requirements, drug file configuration, and key lessons learned from other organisations and within NHS England. So they seem to be really popular, and that's helping to standardise where possible EPMA implementations in Wales. So moving on to the patient access project. This is around, as I said, developing new features within the NHS Wales app. So we're working with the DSPP programme to develop 2 main features. The first is the prescription ready notification. And this is where a patient will be notified in the NHS Wales app that their GP prescription is ready to be ready from their community pharmacy. So I liken this to Amazon. I have my Amazon order sent to my local petrol station. Once I've made the order, I don't wait 48 hours and then just go to my petrol station to collect my order. I go once I've had my text notification say it's ready. So it's the same principle here. The patient will receive a notification in the NHS Wales app informing that their prescription is ready. So we've gone live recently with that feature with 1 PMR supplier, and we're live in 2 community pharmacies with 441 notifications sent. And we're working with the remaining 6 other PMR suppliers who have a footprint in Wales to complete readiness and to make that feature available to the rest of the patients in Wales. And the second feature then we're making available in the NHS Wales app is the ability for patients to log into the app and to record a nominated pharmacy to receive their GP prescription. This is currently in development, and we're dependent on an application program interface being delivered by NHS England, but we plan to develop that feature before the end of the financial year. And the one thing I want to highlight here says nominate a community or online pharmacy. So we've worked very closely with Community Pharmacy Wales to ensure that patients are aware that if they nominate or want an online pharmacy to dispense or send the prescriptions, there's likely to be a charge for that because those online pharmacies don't have a footprint in Wales and they're based in England. So we've worked very closely with professional groups and partners to make sure that we're not disadvantaging one patients or community pharmacies on the high street in Wales. Moving on to the Shared Medicine Record project. So this is around delivering a single consolidated medicines, allergies and tolerance record for every patient in Wales. And what that means for patients who are admitted or have transfer of care, they don't have to keep re-providing their medication details wherever they see a healthcare professional. The healthcare professional can pull that data from the Shared Medicine Record into their application. Could be an EPMA on hospital admission and medicines reconciliation, and validate that information with the patient. It'll also provide a clear view of medicines and allergies all in one place, which ultimately provides safer care. And whilst the advantage of having this information digitally also allows us to do some deep dives and data analysis, this information from the Shared Medicine Record will then feed into the National Data Resource to do some data intelligence. So what we achieve with the Shared Medicine Record, so in order to share that information consistently in between systems, we need to adopt a consistent language. So we've published a medicines, allergies and intolerance data standards change notification, and that's published to introduce a single medicines and allergies language using DM&D for medicines, which is Dictionary for Medicines and Devices, as SNOMED CT for allergies. And those medicines, which are digital standards, could technically then be reused and written into other assured applications with the need to manually transcribe that information. We've published a Welsh Health circular called Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources Release 4, and that's the interoperability standard for Wales, and that will help the information to be shared to a consistent technical standards. And we've successfully completed some initial testing within the EPMA supplier with the GP Medicines API, which has demonstrated that we can reuse the information recorded in the GP system and write it into the EPMA system without manually transcribing, which could be a huge benefit for patients and those providing care on the front line. And ultimately, that's demonstrated that through having coded medicines and allergies information, we can store it once and use it many times. Just a couple of slides before I conclude the presentation. So stakeholder engagement is at the heart of everything we do. I won't go through everything that we've done here, but we have a digital medicines e-newsletter. We have the monthly e-bulletin that goes out to our community pharmacies, GPs around EPS. We presented at numerous conferences, Medi Wales Conference. We supported the Health Education Improvement Wales Conference, and we're liaising with all the necessary professional groups. And importantly, worthwhile highlighting that we're presenting at the National Eisteddfod in August as well to give an update on what we're doing with digital meds. So in summary then, to bring the presentation to a close, we're digitally signing and sending GP prescriptions to a patient's nominate community pharmacy using EPS. We're fully digitising medicines prescribing in hospitals, and health boards and Velindre have a choice of 3 suppliers to enter into contractual arrangement with. We're delivering a Shared Medicine Record, which will provide a consolidated medicines, allergies and intolerance record, which we can access at the point of care. We're developing 2 new features in the NHS Wales app. One is the prescription ready notification, and the second is the ability to record a pharmacy to receive your GP prescription. Underpinning all this is interoperability and data standards. As I said, we've published those data standards and Welsh Health Circular, which ultimately will allow that medicines, allergies and intolerance information to follow the patient wherever care is provided in Wales. This is the assurance highlight report, which I think I've covered almost everything on here. I'm happy to take any questions on that report. Otherwise, diolch, thank you. I'm happy to take any questions that the committee have.
Great, many thanks, Lawrence. You've covered an awful lot of ground, as has the programme in the last year or so. Ruth's got a question.
Thanks, Lawrence. Brilliant update. I think this is one of the things I get asked most about by colleagues when I'm being challenged on things or asked about things that DHCW is delivering. So it just really really good to see this. Really good to see this moving forward. Thank you. I had 2 questions. Firstly, one of the benefits of EPMA obviously is trying to reduce drug-on-drug reactions and allergies, but that's not listed as a benefit for EPS. Does that benefit only come in when the shared medicines record goes live? So initially you're not going to have that same ability with the electronic prescribing system.
Okay, so I think for EPS, I think the difference with EPS and EPMA, I think it's really important to highlight that EPS is not a prescribing system. EPS is the transport layer, if you like. So the GP system will create the prescription. So whatever processes they have now for flagging those adverse reactions, drug-on-drug interactions, that will continue. What EPS does, it removes the need to print. So once that prescription is created within the GP system, EPS will send the prescription to the nominally community pharmacy to the spine for it to be pulled down. So it's not an e-prescribing system, it transfers the prescription digitally.
Okay, so it is the shared medicines record then that will bring that benefit through. That's really helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I've got one of those really annoying what about me questions. Typically I have to visit at least 3 pharmacies to find one that actually has the medication that I need. So how's this gonna help me?
So I'm not sure EPS will solve that stock issue, because that's a different issue whether the medicine's in stock in the community pharmacy. For you, at the moment, if you have a prescription that's sent to your nominally community pharmacy and only part of the prescription is available, unfortunately you'd have to return that prescription to the GP, and they'd have to either print it and give it to you and you go to another pharmacy, or if you go into another EPS enabled pharmacy, they'd resend. So EPS isn't solving that stock issue. In time, when EPS is rolled out across Wales, there's something called EPS Anywhere. And that means if you go to your community pharmacy and 1 out of 2 of your items available, they'll be able to give you a prescription token and print it. We'll have a barcode on it and you can take it to another pharmacy. They can scan that then, and then the other part of the prescription can be dispensed. But that will be dependent on the EPS being rolled out across Wales.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. Marion.
Thank you, Chair. Diolch, Lawrence. Excellent update. Really enjoyed that. And I have to say that the feedback I've been hearing from the pharmacy community, if you like, has been so hugely positive. And I know that the outstanding pharmacies are really looking forward to being online in the spring. I think you said that all pharmacies would have access. I just wanted your assessment. Do you believe that take-up will be 100%? Or,
okay.
Are we likely to see some stragglers not embracing this wonderful development?
So I think there's been a lot of support for it, because obviously with having multiple PMR suppliers in Wales, that introduces competition into the market as well. I think the key milestone for us at the end of March, to be clear, or in April, is for all PMR suppliers to be assured to use EPS. So that means at least 1 pharmacy supplier from each will have gone through what we call a first of type. You could consider that an early adopter. It proves that the technology works. Once that's proven, then we'll start rolling out to the other remaining. So there could be 1 for each PMR, but the remaining footprint will be rolled out, and that's got to be planned carefully. So we have a national EPS advisory group, which has representation from Community Pharmacy Wales and health boards, because what we've got to consider is 1, the PMR technical readiness and whether you can roll out within a particular environment. So you could be, I don't mind, I live in Danes Court, my GP might be EPS enabled. 1 pharmacy might have EPS to receive prescriptions digitally, or the other might have a different PMR, which isn't enabled. So we've got to be careful we don't destabilize the community pharmacy environment. So there's a lot of planning that goes into, right, which PMR systems are technically enabled, and we're working with our group to plan that rollout. The one constraining factor we have is the migration to the GP system is not going to be completed until January 2027. So that is a rate limiting factor for us for EPS, that we do need to wait until that migration is completed. But I personally feel there's lots of appetite. We've got the right people on the boards and the governance groups, and we're not really seeing any delays with implementation. If anything, it's the opposite.
Thank you. Diolch.
Okay, Rudian.
Thank you. Lawrence, excellent leadership by you. Excellent presentation. Very much appreciate the effort that you're putting into this, because it is a key part of patient safety. If we look at drug-related harm, it's very high. And the fact that we should be in a situation where we have a legible prescription is a very good thing. I just want a couple of observations and a couple of questions then, Lawrence, if you wouldn't mind. The first one I wanted clarity on is, you talked about removing paper from the ward environment. There are other things that are prescribed to patients, including blood transfusions and IV fluids. And I'm unclear as to where the blood transfusion paperwork or digital fits into this. And that would be one question. The second thing, colleagues may be aware that Prof Routledge and Ruth Hussey, as the CMO, introduced an all-Wales standardised drug chart at the turn of the century. Train wants to prescribe, Train wants to dispense a single paper user interface. Now we're going to have 3 different user interfaces, and you probably know where I'm going with this. People move and training, and we need to be cognizant that everyone is adequately trained and therefore shouldn't have access to a system that can potentially cause harm unless they're trained to use it. And I think that is a risk that we need to hold. The dependency on smart cards, it's been unavoidable. Could you just clarify who's the issuing authority for a smart card, particularly for secondary care? So permanent clinicians, probably not so difficult. A lot of mobile workforce, mobile locum GPs moving around Wales, etc. The ability to safely identify those individuals as truly have access. Thank you.
Right, so I'll start with the smart cards. So the smart cards is a requirement for EPS access. So the issuing authority there will be NWSSP. So we have a process established where if you have a GP who needs a smart card, there will be a registration authority within the GP practice itself. They'll send an email to that GP to say that they need to create a care identity if they haven't got one already. They complete the paperwork and then that gets sent to the NWSSP, and then the card is then sent to them. What's really important with that smart card is that they can take that across organisational boundaries with them. So it's not one smart card for a particular GP practice or community pharmacy. It can be moved to another GP. It just needs to be allocated the permission types. For secondary care, where the smart card comes into, so the smart card is not needed for the ePMA solution itself. It will be needed at the moment if there's when we make the ability to send outpatient prescriptions to a patient's community pharmacy, because that will use EPS. So that isn't live anyway yet, Rydian, but at the moment, as it stands now, there is a hard requirement to have a physical smart card to use EPS. So we do need to have a conversation around NWSSP, whether they'll continue to do that registration authority with secondary care. We haven't got there yet. One, because it's not technically enabled yet, and 2, is not immediate part of our scope, but we do need to look at that. But I would envisage it would continue to be NWSSP, but we'd obviously have to agree that with them. The other question on the 3 different interfaces, yeah, I understand that. I think a lot of this program's around open architecture, interoperability, sharing information. I think we need to work closely with the health boards, particularly with the COCA, the Community of Knowledge and Action Group, how we can give training to clinicians that move across health board boundaries. It may be using other applications as a UI, so it's something we are looking at. We need to manage. It needs to be appropriate training, whether that's done with training videos on site, etc. That's being worked through with the health boards, but the trainer ultimately sits with the health board. But we'll support that. In terms of the blood transfusion question, I'd like to take that away and just check the requirements before I share anything in this recorded meeting. So if I can send you an email after that or add it to this group, I'll check that requirement and I'll get a clinician to respond to that question.
Thanks, Lawrence. Just going to come quickly back on 2 things, David. One is Ruth. About the app. If we use the NHS app and we had a directory of services, you'd actually be able to find a pharmacy which is open, because that's the first thing you have to do when you've got a script. So that's another potential benefit of the NHS app. We're going for a standard-based interoperability here, Lawrence. The importance of the shared medicine record cannot be understated as the source of the truth of what a patient is on. I have some concerns about the visibility of the content of that across all aspects of the pathways, particularly community pathways, where they do a lot of medicines reconciliation, and also primary care. So the ability that we know that we have an issue across Wales, for example, with the discharge advice letter communication to ensure safe handover of care. What is that on the risk log of the programme board?
I don't recall seeing it. Again, I'll check, and that's partly because at the moment our scope for ePMA is secondary care. SMR, yes, wanted to be a consolidated record and needs to be available to the right people. Later phases, again, we're talking around whether we can grant read-only access to shared medicine records. So if we do need to make available in primary care, community care, that could be an option, but we haven't got any timelines around that at the moment. Our initial focus is around, we got the SMR, let's populate it with GP medicines, because that's 98%, I think, of the medicines prescribed in GP with the allergies. Let's get the secondary care data in there from EPMAs, and we need to work from there then. All right, what about dental? What about Optom? What about community care? How can we give read access to the SMR? So it's on our roadmap's the wrong word. It's on our list, but we don't know when or what the timelines are for that just yet, really.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. We are running a little bit over, so I'll take a couple of quick questions from Evan and Simon. Over to you, Evan.
So comment from me, David, and I'm very conscious of time. So thanks, Lawrence. That was a really outstanding update on what the medicines programs have achieved over the last 3 years or so. And I think it's a real credit to the teams and to everybody who's been involved, all the different partners that are involved, to get through so much business so quickly. And as you hinted at, there's still a lot more to do. And I know that the medicines program chairs share that ambition, and so does Andrew Evans, the Chief Pharmaceutical Officer in Welsh Government, to expand the scope to cover things like closed loop medicines administration and a bunch of other things. There's a lot more work to do, but it's really exciting, and it's really good to see that momentum and the pace of delivery there. As some of Bridget's comments highlighted, there's a lot of devil in the detail in the medicines programs, as there is in lots of other programs, and there's a high degree of interaction. And also there are choices that maybe in retrospect were not quite as ideal as they might have been, but hindsight is a wonderful thing, and we seek to learn from those. And as we were talking earlier on about maternity, EPMA is on a multi-vendor framework, and so we're going to end up with more than one different supplier, and we're trying to learn from that as we take hopefully a different approach on maternity, for example. So not everything is in the gift of DHEW as a single organisation. We only work when we work, we can only achieve by working closely with partners, coming to collaborative, collective decisions, and sometimes, like the single drug chart, for example, they create new risks that we have to address because of the choices that we have made. But as long as we learn and refine and get better and tighter collectively, all of us, not just DHEW, as we go, I think that gives us some confidence that we can continue to deliver high quality services and help people to do that. So, but it's a really good update, and thank you very much indeed, Lawrence.
Okay. Simon.
My question relates to the point Yvonne was making there, really. And thanks, Lawrence. It's a great update, and it's a hugely important program, and
thank you.
Huge amount of work has happened and is happening. It's fantastic to see the progress still going on. But it's likely, if not inevitable now, that we will end up with all three suppliers who are on the framework agreement being chosen in Wales by different health boards. I suppose my question is, that's obviously out with our control, but the ability to manage and mitigate the risk of having different suppliers, particularly where some health boards, and indeed all health boards, are increasingly looking at regionally, where it's going to be critical that data works across boundaries. What's your, it's a horrible question, and you might want to say I'll defer. I won't answer, but I mean, what's your gut feel around it, Lawrence, in terms of that level of risk?
It is a challenge, but what we're doing to mitigate that, we have established this Community of Knowledge Action Group, which we've got representation from all the health boards. And what we're looking to do is to standardise where possible. So there might be a different UI, different system deployed in a health board, but can we standardise it as much as we can around processes, how it looks? So at least if you've got healthcare providers going across health board boundaries, it's not a huge amount of variation. So I think inevitably there will be differences, the different products, but I think our role as a national team working with the health boards to go, right, how can we get a consistent design which reduces that risk with clinicians using different systems? And that's the challenge of the national team that we've got at the moment, and we're working with those health boards to try and identify those areas for standardisation.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. Thanks very much for the presentation and for the progress that you're making. I think I can say on behalf of the board, we're assured it's in safe hands and you're making really good progress. So many thanks for that. And we'll now move on to the Cancer Informatics Programme. running a little bit behind schedule, so maybe I can try and be a little bit briefer on this one. Are we with you for this one, Evan?
Nope, we were with Alex. Well, you're with me, and then
Oh,
I'm
with
handing
Alex.
over to Alex.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Diolch Ivan, diolch yn fawr pawb. Hopefully you can see my screen in presentation mode.
We can, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. As previously mentioned, my name is Alex Percival. I am the new head of Plan Care Programmes in DHCW, so I think I'm in week 3 in post as of today. I have been invited to provide a presentation on the progress to date within the Cancer Informatics Programme. So I guess to start from the beginning, what actually is the Cancer Informatics Programme? So the programme was established to provide a new solution for our cancer services across Wales. Essentially, the aims are to improve our access to cancer information and deliver or provide a new digital way of delivering cancer services, which utilises the modern infrastructure and digital technologies across Wales, with a view to improving cancer services and outcomes for patients in Wales. Essentially, what that means is that we'll be replacing the legacy CANISC system with a new design system that uses forms from the Welsh Clinical Portal system, as well as information within the Welsh PAS patient administration system. So we've got a kind of combined approach between different existing elements of the national architecture in order to replace that existing element for CANISC. CANISC is a legacy solution. It has been in use for a number of years across NHS Wales, predominantly by Velindre as a patient administration system, but then also for a number of areas across all of the health boards for different elements of the delivery of cancer services. So, for example, business intelligence and activity data, waiting times reporting, the Cancer Intelligence and Surveillance Unit and Cancer Research UK also have hookups into CANISC, and essentially it's been used for a long period of time and it's coming towards its end of its life. So this is something that's been exacerbated by the expiry of Microsoft 2012 operating system. So that went end of life in October 2023. We are currently procuring extended security updates for the service. They come with an additional cost, and it also limits our ability to do certain developments on that solution. As well as that, the front end, the Fox Pro language, hasn't been supported since 2015. So the kind of main driver for the Cancer Informatics Programme is to replace CANISC with this new solution. We are in a position where CANISC is quite a fragile system, and we need to make sure that we're replacing it with a more modern solution moving forwards. Within the programme itself, and in order to kind of achieve that end goal of preventing new data from going into CANISC and supporting health boards to start using the new solutions that are being developed, there are 4 key work streams. The first is around the multidisciplinary meeting, which is essentially providing the eForm functionality to support multidisciplinary discussion within Welsh Clinical Portal. So that also then links into the patient administration functionality and the patient management system, PMS, in Cardiff and Vale. So essentially what we'll be doing is using eForms to support clinical decision making within Welsh Clinical Portal. And we are in the process of rolling that out to the health boards currently, and we're expected to complete this month as well. The second work stream is around data and reporting of treatment summaries. So you can see there are 3 tiers. We have delivered already the tier 1 data to the health boards, and we're working at the moment to deliver all reports, with the exception of palliative care, screening and colposcopy, which I'll pick up in the next slide. Additionally, we have Power BI versions of the reporting for non-technical users so that we can use information and dashboards to show the performance of services. Like I say, we focus primarily on the phase 1 process with Villinger Cancer Centre, and within phase 2, we'll be seeking to deliver those interfaces to the 3 regions for South West Wales, North West Wales and South East Wales for haematology and paediatrics. And that work is in progress and due to complete by the end of the programme in March 2025. As mentioned, the other element is the palliative care process. So what we are doing is we're going to work with the Welsh Clinical Portal team in order to deliver the digital specialist palliative care processing. This is new functionality which replaces that's provided in CANISC. So we've currently got people still using CANISC for that palliative care functionality. We've developed 3 of the e-forms and an application, and that's available for use. And then what we'll be doing is deploying the final bits of functionality for palliative care in the next iteration of WCP, and that release is planned and should be completed within this month as well. In addition, we're working on a new solution for screening and colposcopy. So this is a new hardware and software solution which will connect securely to colposcopy clinics, provide a centralized server for image repository, and also the development of a colposcopy form to support that. We'll also do an import of over 425,000 existing colposcopy images from CANISC's databases into the new system. At present, it will be hosted on cloud. However, it's been designed with, be hosted on premise, but it's been designed with cloud in mind. So when that is available, we'll be able to migrate the service into a cloud solution. Just in terms of milestones, we've been running phase 2 of the programme since January 2023. As you can see, we've delivered consistent functionality over the course of the past 18 months or so, and we'll continue to deliver on those milestones moving forward until the end of the programme in March 2025. Benefits are primarily to do with the replacement of the legacy infrastructure, reduction of cybersecurity risk associated with end-of-life software and unsupported hardware and software. Also, reliability and reduction in service outages is also important, and there'll be a follow-on in terms of benefits for that with regards to improved clinical and patient safety as data and the service is more reliable moving forward. There'll also be wider benefits for the service about being able to get better development into the new solution, be more responsive using the new technology to the needs of the service, and delivering essentially ultimately better services for patients across Wales. I've also provided at a high level the assurance report, as Lawrence did. The assurance report shows that we've made some progress. There's still a lot of work to be done between now and the end of the programme's funding in 2025. So the focus for the programme really will be to deliver those remaining 4 work streams and then ensure that we can decommission CANISC and start using the WCP WPAS solution in future. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex. If you could take your slides down, we'll see if you've got some questions.
Yep.
I can't see Ridian. Do you want a question or a comment?
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of both, actually. Alex, good to have you on board. This is a very complex programme. I've been operating in an environment, cancer environment, for many years, where the dependency on this information within this system is key. It's worth noting that there were only around 2,000 users of CANISC across Wales. There are 35,000 users of WCP. So putting the cancer information into the electronic health record has allowed that information to be visible to more people involved in the care of those individuals who have those unfortunate diseases. And that's particularly important when you look at the external beam radiotherapy services that are provided and the very expensive and toxic systemic anti-cancer treatment drugs that are provided. And we've talked about the pharmacy program, harm related to that, the acute oncology service. So, people who are ill related to their treatment present everywhere in Wales, and the fact that clinicians can now see what's going on from the cancer centres is absolutely key. I just want to shout out some thanks to departments beyond the clinical and the UI. I think we're very dependent on cybersecurity. We're dependent on infrastructure. We've got to keep the lights on, and we've got to get this done within the imminent time frame. And I just want to reassure, particularly the independent members, that as a team, we're absolutely focused on decommissioning this because it does present a risk that we do not wish to hold any longer than we have to. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, Ridian. And Chris?
Yeah, it's a similar point to Ridian's actually. Just wanted to thank Alex for doing the presentation so early into his role.
Yeah.
Really helpful presentation. And the priority this is having a head of plan care, I think, to help oversee is really great.
Yeah, I would echo that. Thanks again, Alex. Really good to have you on board. Thanks for getting up to speed really quickly and for the presentation today. And look forward to hearing from you in a future meeting on the progress you've made going forward. Okay, with that, let's move on to Digital Maternity Cymru. We have already touched briefly on this with the business case update, and we are running a bit behind schedule. So even maybe we could try and catch up a little bit on the session.
I'll do my best for you. I'm just hoping that is up on screen.
I can see
if everyone can see that, wonderful.
Yep.
I'm feeling somewhat intimidated following Lawrence and Alex on their presentations, but I take a bit of comfort from having been immersed in the OBC over the last few weeks. Obviously, the Digital Maternity Cymru programme goes back quite a long time before my very close involvement at that level, anyway. So I'm just going to try and give a bit of an overview as to where it's come from. It's in a different life stage, let's say, than the two programs that you've just had an update on. Both those are in delivery, very strongly in delivery phase, as you've just heard, and hopefully the CANISC program, or the cancer program, is coming towards the end of its program life cycle. The Maternity Cymru program is right at the beginning of its program life cycle, in that it's just got to the OBC stage, so it's not into the procurement or to the delivery and configuration stages. So let me just see if the screens work here. There we are. So as a background to Digital Maternity Cymru, as Ridian, I think, mentioned earlier on in the meeting, there are, on a fairly regular cadence somewhere across the UK, issues that arise in maternity services because of an absence of paper records, or an absence of records, or fragmented record, or something which leads to harm to mothers and or to babies, and that is something that the NHS right across the UK has been dealing with, and to look at those risks. A few years ago, the Welsh Government published a policy document, I suppose we'd call it, or a strategy called Maternity Care in Wales, as part of which they included a commitment to explore a single electronic record across Wales, so that fragmentation and potentially partial record was a comprehensive one, that it was available to mothers, their and birthing people, their partners, and also to the healthcare profession, so that the information would be there. It's consistent with lots of other ambitions, of course, isn't it, to have all the information that is relevant at the time that it is needed for the person that is there to help, to support, to make decisions. It's out of that the Digital Maternity Cymru programme developed, and its objective reflects that. So the objective is on the top right there. So delivering a digital maternity solution across Wales to support clinicians and empower women and birthing people. And the phase of working through that was initially a discovery, and I'll mention just that in the next slide. Where we are, as we discussed earlier, is that there is an outline business case now, which is signed off by the management board. It's been assured by this committee. It's supported by the program chair and by the program board. But there are still some concerns from health boards about the extent of their support and their commitment to implement. So we just need to pause and work through those at the moment. So it's not a very old program. The discovery project is kind of a pre-program phase through 21 and 2022. It's at the very end of 2022 that the investment proposal to Welsh Government was supported off the back of the discovery exercise, and the discovery exercise was very closely aligned to maternity care in Wales as a strategy, and I think it's 5 headings that they've got there, or 5 sort of key user groups, and the impact upon them. And so through 2023, the programme was established, was working off the basis of an investment proposal, but without an OBC at that stage, until there was a pause and a slight change of direction at the end of 2023, based on learning from other programs. And the period since then has been very much focused on developing that case and understanding everything, so that all the costs were exposed, all the challenges, the health board commitments, and everything else. And you can see on this slide in front of you the timeline that the program has worked through, particularly over the last, the bottom half is over the last 6 months or so, 6 to 7 months, to get to where we are today. And I think it's been really important to pull out the health board's position on where we are, to make sure that we get it right from the start, because the more we can do that, the smoother the journey will be from here on in. The benefits, there are a wide range of benefits. I'm not going to rehearse them all. It's very small text as well, so you may not be able to read it on your screen. But there's a sort of an extensive range of benefits that have been worked through the discovery process and then reinforced, I suppose, and further evidenced by the outline business case, which is where they're set out, formally and in structure. And they range from information, reporting of data, analytics, planning, more flexibility and responsiveness, and there's quite a strong emphasis, and I think a very welcome one, on enabling patients to see the healthcare record themselves. And that does happen in maternity, in that mothers and birthing people will carry around their they'll carry around a paper folder. This is trying to give them full access to the digital record in a more modern 21st century way, I suppose I would say. Stakeholder engagement and resources have been extremely important. I think the real emphasis on working with partners, especially clinical partners in this area, and the clinical community for midwifery and for maternity has been very strongly in support of a national digital system, and has been very, very closely involved. The programme funds 7 digital midwives and clinical leads. So that's been really important through the programme in order to come to the position that it is in. There's a programme team as well, so put in place in the first half of 2023, and then through the OBC phase to where we are today. And there's been a lot of work on the procurement and the commercial strategy. My feeling is that we've been evolving quite a lot over the last few years in terms of the commercial and procurement strategy that we have for engaging with the market in a sensible way. We've used master services agreements, we've used single contracts, we've used multi-vendor frameworks. And this hopefully will be the first program where we're using a single supplier framework, and the mechanism that we were discussing earlier on. Behind that goes all of the requirements gathering. All that is in place, and so that phase of work, I guess, is complete. And we move next into the framework procurement, and then following that would be implementation. And those stages are set out quite clearly in the program plan. This is the dashboard. Red because of where we are on the OBC. And some uncertainty about the longer term, but we're mitigating that or managing that from a program perspective by staging the phasing and allowing a number of decision points that sequence without making a forward commitment. So you don't have to commit to the whole journey now. You can sort of pause at different milestones or waypoints along the journey, and I think that adds some really welcome flexibility and opportunities to manage risk in a sensible way. But the program is still assessing its delivery confidence against the overall objective, which is an implemented national digital maternity system, which is used across the whole of Wales. And so that's why you're seeing the red. It's not if you like a temperature check of where it is right now. So there are some key risks which inform that red. It is really difficult at the moment across the whole system for multiple partners to all commit at the same time to something which is 3-4 years ahead sometimes, and is unknown, because everybody has got different priorities. Different health boards have got different status in terms of the escalation framework that we have in Wales. All of them, including ourselves, are under very significant financial constraint and financial pressure, and every organisation has got to make its own prioritisation decisions, and that makes it hard to work collaboratively, especially on a forward three-year sort of cycle or longer if you count the live operations commitments as well. There is also a risk about the ability to standardize clinically. and to standardize the adoption. And that's why there's such an emphasis on the clinical engagement. The wider financial position we'll all be aware of, and I think an imminent one, not so much well, the risk is the uncertainty of the impact of these changes. So there are changes to the procurement regulations that take effect at the beginning of November, well, either at the very last few days of October or the beginning of November, and they will be new for the whole industry, if you like, in some ways. So there's going to be an adjustment period, and that inevitably will create some instability and some uncertainty, and probably some stretch and pressure on resources, etc. So we very much want to start the procurement process before that happens, which means that we need to start the procurement process in October. And in the traditional way, that would mean an approval of the OBC and then a start of the procurement by then. So it puts a really urgent deadline, or not an urgent deadline, because we're hoping to start the procurement well before that. But it is a risk that if we can't get the consensus support that we need by then, and the procurement slips, that will slip us a lot more than the timetable which is in the program. And then finally, we've got some issues which are around the certainty of funding. If you look at the whole envelope, now that we've put all the requirement on the table, working with health boards, that's a quite large amount of money, and Welsh Government, understandably, is considering its options in terms of funding all of that on an advanced sort of 2-3 years down the line kind of basis, which is again why we've got the staged approach, and several health boards have helpfully, I think, set out their position and their concerns around the digital maternity system and the programme, and that is all rehearsed in the OBC, so that everybody's going into this with their eyes open from the very beginning, which I think is a significant step forward. And you know, I think we should look at that as something that we take additional assurance or more assurance and confidence from, rather than a problem. It's better to have that out now rather than later on. So there is a timeline. This is a timeline with no optimism bias, right? So in the past, there's been a perception, and I think there's been sometimes a reality that you know, knowing what it is that stakeholders want from us, that we've been willing to promise to stretching timelines, targets, and other things, and then they're stretching for a reason. Dependencies on suppliers and others take their impact, and then the timeline that we are then perceived to have promised slips. And I really, really don't want that to happen in programs going forward. And so this is a timeline that we have a confidence in delivering. The program team, I know, will want to do this more quickly. We're talking with Welsh Government about whether there are options during this timeline that we could that we could compress, or even stages that we could take out completely, in order to be able to achieve the full timeline end to end more quickly than this. And you know, my ambition is to achieve more quickly than this. But in the OBC, we set out what we have a deliverable timetable in which we have a high level of confidence, I think would be the phrase that I would want to use. Rather than over-promising and under-delivering, I would rather promise something I know we can deliver and then try to deliver it more quickly. So that's the approach that we're taking in the OBC. So I think this is the last slide. So there we are. I'll stop sharing there, and hopefully I've got us more or less back on time, and I would welcome any questions or comments.
Okay, thanks for that summary, Eamon. Anybody got any questions? I've got one, which is you mentioned these. Oh, Simon, you go first. Go.
Well, it's an observation rather than a question, Ivan, because we see it across so many issues now. Is just when you look at that timeline, the thing that can knock it all off course is the pace at which you can get 6 or sometimes 7 individual organisations on the same page. And we clearly, I mean, we just got to focus on this as much as we possibly can with those who can make decisions that can help, because otherwise people won't see the benefits of digital applications in a reasonable time frame. And I think people have heard me talk about this before. And in those circumstances, I mean, there's a real ethical issue involved then in people not getting things that would improve outcome in whatever way as fast as we know it could be achieved.
Yeah, that's a really strong
expecting an answer. There's no answer to it, Ivan. It's an observation, really.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you, Simon, absolutely. And Evan, I've got one question which is related to these new procurement regulations. What happens if we don't get it launched by October, what is it likely to lead to some delay? Is that why you're trying to get it launched before?
It's a risk, and Michelle can provide more detail than I can about the specific nature of the changes in the regulations. But I think it's mainly the fact that they're changing, and therefore the whole profession and the way that we procure is going to have to adapt to that, which will create a lot of stress in the system, and therefore that creates an uncertainty and an instability.
Okay, fine. All right, thanks for that clarification. Anything further on Digital Maternity Cymru? No, great. Thanks, Evan. I think we can be assured that the programme is in safe hands, although picking up Simon's point, getting it over the line and doing it once for Wales is a bit of a challenge. So with that, we'll move on. Any other business? I've not been notified in advance of anything anybody wants to raise, so I'll just pause and see if there is anything. No, can't see any hands. Okay, so the Chair's highlight report. I've noted a few things going along that I will add in, and I'll work with our governance colleagues to make sure that we've covered everything. Is there anything specific anybody would wish me to raise in the highlight report? No, okay, fine, thanks. So just for clarity, it'll be the escalations that we had in the summary report, some of the risks around the ongoing funding, which we've known for a while, but in particular NDR and DSPP, where we had a significant change, and some of the other issues that we've covered today. With that in mind, I'll bring this meeting to a close. Apologies that we've overran slightly, but if on reflection, we've covered an awful lot of ground today, and maybe when we do our development section next week, we should maybe take stock of the format and whether we're allowing sufficient time for breaks, and we'll take it into review. But thanks everyone for your attendance today, particularly the presenters, and for the quality of the questions. And with that, I'll bring this to a close and just note that the next meeting is on the 7th of November later this year. Okay, thanks everyone. Take care.